Start recording. Do. Recording the stuff. Recording the stuff. Na 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 na. Recording the stuff. Na 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 na. Recording the stuff. If my users in chat is actually right, hi Fleecy. I don't know how up to date it is. Yay! There seems to be a bit of a delay between the actual viewer count and what I see. Thank you. This is actually a photo of a place called Gillette Castle in Connecticut, where I used to live a while ago. And it is basically a rich dude who played Sherlock Holmes on the stage built a big ass castle. Yeah, they've it. I guess the family owns it or somebody owns it, maybe the state, and they've preserved it as a sort of museum. It's really pretty, and it's got this big old greenhouse in the back. So I took a bunch of photos at sunset to test out a camera I had. Oh yeah, no, it's really pretty. That whole area is really nice in the summer and the fall. It's not so nice in the winter because it gets snowy and crappy. But yeah, I've actually got a few photos from there. The one that is technically on the background of the reading stream is a close up of one of the plants, but it's kind of obscured by the window of the browser. So yeah, like all the photos I use for this and the Alabaster Bible and everything are stuff I've taken over a few years. Because I did photography kind of semi-professionally for like 3 years ish. It's really hard to make a living at it, and moving to Texas made things tricky. So I really like it. I keep thinking I should go and do more of it, but I've got a lot of irons in the fire right now. But yeah, I I did a book. I had actually a book published of photography of abandoned industrial sites, all in Connecticut. The publisher is like a really small scale, like local history place. Well, it's a photography book. It's combining the writing and the photography part. It's like the photos are the focus, but they wanted narration. And yeah, no, I'm really happy with it. I haven't seen a dime from it, and I don't have any idea how many are sold. I know at least like four, and it's got a couple reviews. So I'm actually really it's cool. Um, I'll drop a link to it in the Discord at some point. But yeah, no, I really like doing it, and the writing is all just kind of narration of like what I was thinking while I was going through these places. Sort of. It's like my recollection of it. So it was a lot of fun to write, and the publisher was really cool. Yeah, basically, yeah. I saw some really weird stuff, like because you get a lot of like homeless people that live in these places. So, um, oh, that's cool. Yeah, I found one industrial site where people were living there, and not being an asshole, I didn't go and like bother them, but there was like a tent in the middle of this big old like metal works, and there was also like a homeless a room basically where they had a note that was actually really sad. It was like, don't stop stealing my stuff. Like everything that you could possibly want to take is already gone. It's like, wow, how much of a piece of shit do you have to be to go in and take a homeless person's things? Um, and also, I got chased by security once in one location. Um, oh, we've got another. Yeah, I was in I was taking pictures of a mental facility in New York, um, and it's a really big complex. and I knew there was security on site, so I kind of snuck in and went into the far buildings and took some pictures and ran into some other explorers and waved at them. And then right as I was about to leave, I was like, well, I'm going to go just look at the main building and see if I can get some interesting pictures. And I walked over to the side of it, and then I walked around the corner, and I see this truck right there, and I'm like, oh shit. And I really quickly walked back, and then the fucking truck starts driving over, and I just took off through the woods down the hill because I knew where I wanted to go. The truck circles around, so I'm like running through the woods, and I think they've got like a dog or some shit, and I end up running. The truck is coming up on the left. I ran to the right around like this stand of trees, and fortunately they did not see me, so I was able to get away into the woods where it's public land, and even if they caught up with me, all I needed to do is say, oh, I'm just hiking along. Yeah, that was really fucking terrifying. I was actually trying to meet up with another urban explorer um, to poke around this place, and I had texted him and basically said, oh, thank you. um, hey, so just FYI, there is a security on site. You might want to be careful. Um, but that's the only time I've ever run into any problems doing that kind of stuff, and I don't do it anymore. Um, and for legal purposes, this happened well outside the statute of limitations for trespassing in a state I no longer live in. Um, this was actually several years ago now. Oh no, that's fine. But yeah, no, so that was a hell of an experience. Um, but yeah, I'm don't do urban exploration now because I live in Texas, and Texas is not um, very friendly towards that kind of thing. And we are very friendly towards guns and castle doctrine and that kind of stuff. So not a thing I do much anymore. Had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, Oof is right. I had fun with it. I got a lot of neat pictures. Oh my. I've actually been in two power plants, not nuclear though. I've been to a old coal plant and another old coal plant. Both of which are one of which was almost completely demolished or gutted rather, and one of which was pretty well intact. It is neat. It's really interesting. You got to be really careful. The industrial sites tend to have a lot of not fun stuff in the air, so I would wear a respirator, um, and just generally be careful. I was there to just take pictures, so I wasn't trying to do anything crazy or parkour off of anything. But getting into one of the power plants took some doing just to get over the fence and the razor wire, and then it was like a foot of snow on the ground too, so that was interesting. Um, but yeah, no, it was a cool time. I had a fun experience with it. I saw a lot of really interesting things, and I got a ton of pictures. Actually, one of the coolest places I went is there was an old lodge, like like the Overlook Hotel in The Shining, except it was in Pennsylvania, and it was a place that my dad used to go as a kid, and he told me about it, and then I went there and snuck in, and it is so cool. Like I went in December, so it was all misty and kind of neat looking, and it's a really big, spooky looking building, and it's really neat. And apparently, it's really hard to get into now because they've really cracked down on the security. So I got in just at the right time before they started getting really bad. Because a lot of people break in and they do stupid shit like smash things and steal stuff, and that makes the people that sit on top of these properties really nervous, and they put extra security on. So yeah, it's really cool. It was a fun experience. And I'm gonna yeah, it is. I really don't like that. I think graffiti's neat. I like seeing it. And I like taking pictures of the stuff that, the way these places are, but I think it's really shitty when you go in and just like smash stuff. It's like, why do that? Or take things from places. Like, come on, just fucking leave it alone. Um, and it also makes urban explorers have a really bad. Yeah, no, graffiti doesn't bother me. I like it. I've got some really, really cool pictures of graffiti. There's one, a lot of the old like metalwork plants, because they just have these big open areas, and people would turn them into basically galleries. So you got a lot of really cool art, and really just weird graffiti. Sometimes like kind of neat sayings and stuff I've actually run into. Yeah, it is. It is free art. And sometimes you see stuff and it's like, hey, that's pretty profound. Um, and it's really cool. I like it a lot. And I started to recognize certain graffiti artists. Like there's this one artist who they draw this particular style of dragon, and I saw it everywhere from, I want to say, New York to Rhode Island, in like four different states. Everywhere from this old like Civil War era bunker out on a peninsula in Rhode Island to a metalworking plant in Connecticut. It was cool, and I'd be like, "Hey, it's the dragon," because it's always the same. So it was really cool. Um, yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. I still got my gear. I was really like very guerrilla about it. I basically had a camera and a lens, and then a bag with some stuff that I needed, like respirator and gloves. I didn't go hardcore into like breaking into places, because I figured if I can't get in, I can't get in. Um, I didn't want to smash things, and I didn't go to like I brought a tripod a couple times, but having the tripod is kind of annoying because it's just another thing to weigh you down. So, but yeah, no, it was cool. And I guess I'm gonna like read fanfic on this fanfic reading stream at some point. So hold on. There we go. So I've got two that I'm definitely gonna read. I've got two I'm definitely gonna read, which is the no, I like it. I like chatting, and that's fun. And the chat's like behaving, so I can see it, which is great. But I've got two Dr. June stories I wanted to read, and then I've got some other stuff that I might read. I've got to write some more like fluff, because I was looking through my stuff, because I like to do. Um, I I um I use Streamlabs, so they have a little widget that you can just pop in the chat to anywhere, and it's nice because if I refresh the chat, um, yep, no, that's cool. Um, if I refresh the chat, it still shows up on my screen, so I can see like what people were saying. Because sometimes it'll like glitch out on me, and I won't know what the hell people were talking about. But yeah, no, it's the Streamlabs thing has like built-in widgets for that. It's really convenient. Anyway, I was saying I got to write more fluff because it is built on the OBS platform. Oh no, I don't. That doesn't matter. I'm very stream of conscious when I do these things. Streamlabs is built on OBS, so it uses OBS as its, I guess, its broadcasting platform, and then it adds some functionality unique to streaming. Basically, Twitch integration is really good. It does YouTube, I guess. I've never tried it. It doesn't simulcast, which sucks, but whatever. Excuse me. And it also adds a lot of overlays and stuff, which is really cool because you can get a lot of. Oh, I see. Let me. Yeah, it's really neat. I like it, and it's free because OBS is free, and that's cool too. And it does some integration for like donations and stuff too, which isn't. I mean, I don't really care about that, but well, that's cool. If you do it for a living or something, then that's pretty awesome. I was saying I've got to write more fluff because I was looking through, and I like to do like some things that are not as heavy and some things that are, and I was looking through and I'm like, I'm all out of stuff that's not kind of depressing. Like a lot of what I write is like half depressing and half hopeful, so I don't know how people feel about that. And these are both longer than the other Dr. June stuff. So that might take up a fair chunk of time. They're like 3,000 words each, I think. So, oh, my second Lady Stuck gift. They liked it a lot, but it's like, oh, it's got some real downer stuff in it. Like it's like it's another AU where like half the people are dead because I started just trying to write fluff, and then it was like, yes, the grieving one. Yeah. That was not what I was intending to write. I'm like, I'm gonna write a cute Kanaya and Jade fic where they're just like talking about flowers, and then it's like, oh shit. It it does get hopeful, but it is about recovering from grief. Like that's what it's about for the most part. So yeah, if that's not your jam or you don't think you can deal with that, that's completely legit. I just yeah, I didn't know what I was getting into when I started that, and I was like, nope. Fun little bit of trivia. The pretext for that story, the sort of talking about the flower names, that actually comes from something from when I was a kid. So, my mom is really into to flowers and plants and stuff, and she always uses the scientific names for stuff, and I don't at all. And like her friend doesn't at all. So um it'll always be like, it's Latin name, and I'll be like, what is that? And she's like, oh no, it's this common name plant. Yeah. And I thought that was a really neat little detail to throw in there when I saw the flowers talk thing. But then yeah, I don't See, I've never done that. I like plants, but in a very kind of like, I just think they're neat kind of way. That's fine. You can do whatever you want. I mean, I'm recording this for YouTube too, so it'll all be up whenever I upload that. But yeah, no, I that was the inspiration, and then I think I got kind of like, well, how did they get to this point? Because I'm a big Rosemary shipper, like hardcore, and I'm like, well, what if? Yeah, they are, and sometimes they're almost the same. Like, there was one of them, I think it was the hyacinth, where the Latin name is like hyacintha, and the common name is hyacinth, and it's like, yeah, you're really trying on that one there, guys. Um, but I was like, how do I get to the point where Jade and Kanai are really bonding like this? And then I guess I jumped from that to like everybody's dead, and yeah, it's very, I don't know, I want to say depressing. It's low key. It's very low key. It's sad. It's sad with a hopeful ending. Oh yeah, I don't remember the rhododendron scientific name. I think it's like it's like something rhododendron or something like that. The ones that are really trippy are the rose species because they've always got a scientific name that's Rosa something, and then they've got these elaborate breed names. Yeah. The one I picked for this story is the Queen of the Night rose, which the common name is Queen of the Night, and then it's got Rosa something or other, something with an F, I think. Um, I was looking for a purple rose, and that's one of them. So yeah, I did some research. And I picked dandelion for Carcat because, oh, okay, I didn't know that. I picked dandelion for Carcat because I think they're hugely underrated flowers. Like they're super hardy and they're kind of nice looking. And Bucky got back before I even got to start reading because we've been rambling about me writing depressing fanfic. Yes, they are. I like dandelions. The only downside to them is they destroy lawns, but lawns are bullshit anyway, so it doesn't matter. Um, I actually like flowers a lot. I like gardening. I just don't do it. But I think it's really cool, and I grew up doing a lot of it. So yeah, it's neat. Oh, that's cool. I've never done it professionally. I mean, I worked as a janitor, and I had to do like groundskeeping as part of that, but I was just weed whacking around the fence and mowing the lawn, so that doesn't count. Um, my mother is really into it, and my grandmother's actually a botanist by education. Yeah, it is. Those things fucking terrify me. I just weed whackers are something else. I'm always afraid that it's gonna like catch my shoe or something, which is weird because I have no problem with chainsaws. Like I'm the designated cut trees down person, where my friends wanted to fell a tree that was overhanging their house, and it's like, well, we've got the friend who we don't let use power tools because he's going to hurt himself, and we don't know what we're doing. Oh, John, yeah. So we've got video on Facebook of us pulling a tree down with my truck where I had cut it and it was still standing. So we basically hooked a strap up to it and pulled it down away from the house. Um, it was some real professional ass shit. And I was up on a roof. I was up on a roof with a pole saw, just cutting branches down. Um, but no, they were trying to cut this tree down so they could sell the house without it being, in imminent danger of being hit. Um, yeah, I actually I felled trees to get firewood for a while, so I learned how to do it fairly well. Um, it's exhausting work. Like cutting and bucking trees is just ugh. It takes forever, and then you have to wait for it all to season, and that takes even longer. So, but okay, I'm gonna read some stuff now. So I'm gonna read two Dr. June Egberts, the newer ones I wrote. Excuse me. And one of them is actually has Carpathian stuff, and the other one is Kanaya. Um, so we are reading The Further Exploits of Dr. June Egbert, MD, PhD, Esquire, Chapter 2, Cultural Misunderstanding. These are all standalone chapters. If anyone hasn't, I think everyone here has heard me read these before, but they're all like little mini stories. Dave Strider's lack of understanding for Carapathian culture causes friction. The sash didn't say mayor on it anymore. That had been his old life. His life in the before times. No, instead his sash now had a new title on it. A title that, if June was informed correctly, meant more than mayor ever had. A new title of vast import and considerable responsibility. A title that inferred all manner of things, all of which this former mayor took very seriously. The sash read Director, and that was what he was. He sat in June's office in her home and looked around with the same unabashed curiosity that he always seemed to have. June checked herself. She wasn't actually sure whether or not the Carapacians had a strong concept of gender, and despite the fact that she and her friends had constantly referred to the mayor director as he, she wasn't actually sure that anyone had asked. Excuse me, director? The director turned and nodded. I'm sorry, but we've been referring to you using human male pronouns for years, and I don't know if you've ever said that's okay. Is that okay? She asked, looking closely at the director. The director waved their hands and nodded, his eyes squinting up in the way that the Carapacian smiled. Thumbs up. Okay, so he was fine with it. Good. June smiled. Thank you, Mr. Director. She looked over at Casey at their usual place behind the stenographer's machine. Please make a note, Casey. Wow. It occurred to June that she was aware that the Carapacian used some form of sign language to communicate outside of writing, but she'd never actually had the opportunity to learn it. That would be a problem. Mr. Director, would you mind terribly if we talked using text? I don't know Carapacian, and I don't want to just be talking at you. The director nodded and pulled out a small tablet computer from the folds of his robes. He was obviously quite well prepared for this. The director at Shellbound Cinemaphile. So why do they call you the director now? Why, my good miss, that is an excellent question. Most excellent. I'm called the director because I direct. Specifically, I'm employed by the good folks at New Carapacian Cinema to produce a fine line of new feature films. So, why come to me now? Is the stress of being a big time director getting to you? Are you having issues with creative block? Well, that depends on how you mean creative block exactly, my good miss. Because if by that phrase you mean Dave Strider, then yes. Wait, what? What's Dave doing? See, us Carapacians have never had much in the way of the moving picture arts in the past, so Dave took it on himself to give us some ideas. Problem is, he's obviously just making this into a big joke. His latest pitch was for making Star Wars, except it's a movie based on Star Wars, but all the characters are Wookiees and C-3PO. Rose gifted us a good chunk of the human cinematic library. I've seen Star Wars. I know he's full of malarkey. Oh, I guess he thought it was funny. What's the harm? I
guesses what he was thinking. June, you're a sweet lady, but I need you to understand some things. Do me a favor and give me a call when you learn how to speak some Carpathian.
The director stood up and shook his head, his eyes scowling a little. He made a quick sign with his hands and nodded to June, then turned to walk out.
Wait, I'm sorry,
June called after him as he reached the door. The director turned and shook his head again. Then he was gone out the door before June could say another word.
Oh,
June said, mostly to herself, but also a little bit to Casey.
did I say something wrong?
Casey responded.
You're right. I could have handled that better.
June sighed.
Hello? June? What's wrong? Yeah, so you're smart and stuff, right? I've been told as such, yes. Yeah, neat. I've got a kind of weird problem that maybe you could help me with. Sure, what's up? Well, the mayor, I'm sorry, the director he's called now. He showed up today and he was saying some stuff about Dave's ideas for their movies, and I was saying maybe it was just a joke, and then he got mad at me and told me to learn Carapacian, and I think he got mad and then he left. Are you there? June. Yeah. June. What? What do you know about the Carpathians? I don't know. They lived on Prospit and Thurs and stuff, and they fought in the big battles, and they really like human culture a lot. Oh boy, this is gonna take a bit. What do you mean? So you remember how it was with your dad and the clowns? He thought you would like them, and you kind of felt like you had to at least pretend to like them because of how important he was to you, right? Sure. Use your Dr. Professor brain here, June. Seriously. You're saying the Carapacians just pretend to like human stuff because of us. I mean, sometimes we're literal gods to them, and they've looked up to us for thousands of years. We're just kind of come back into things, and suddenly they want to make us feel happy and at home on their planet. So they adopt a whole bunch of human stuff. And they obviously like a lot of it, and it's fun for them, but also they put up with a lot of our bullshit because they look up to us. Oh no. Yeah, and movies are new to them. So they were mostly just going along with whatever Dave suggested because he was the one that said anything. But now it looks like they're trying to make their own versions of the art. So why is it so offensive that Dave is doing that? Can't they just ignore him? Sure, but probably a lot of them feel afraid to say anything. Or they didn't want to hurt Dave's feelings. I don't think he'd actually be hurt by that. Probably not, but they don't know that. The director obviously takes this seriously, and he's close to Dave. So he probably feels uncomfortable telling him directly. Carapacian culture is very big on subtext and context. Oh, is that why he asked me to learn Carapacian? Yeah, I think so. Carapacian is a complex sign-based language. It took me 2 years to learn it. You know Carapacian? What do you think I was doing on the ship with my time? Just sitting around being miserable? I mean, I was, but I also learned Carapacian. I don't have 2 years to do this. I'll help translate if you really want, but you need to understand they have their own culture. Like, they've had 5,000 years to develop a society with its own rules and stuff. I, I guess I didn't really think about it like that because of all the human culture stuff. June, when it comes to human culture, Carapacians are kind of like a weebs. Did you just say? Look, it's the best word I could think of to describe it. Damn it! They like the ideas of a bunch of human culture, but they have no sense what it actually means. Dave acts like it's a big joke he can play around with, but most of us don't think much about it because we don't interact with them a whole lot. Oh shoot! I just got a good idea. What? Have you considered that you live with someone who's worked extensively with the Carapacians? Oh shit! Didn't even think about Roxy. I bet they know Carapacian. Honestly, they'd probably be more in touch with their culture than me. My Carapacian is basically like speaking Old English half the time. Oh, Roxy!
June knocked on the door to Roxy's small office. They were sitting at a large drafting table with a sheet of paper in front of them, tracing lines that June only barely knew the meaning of.
Hmm.
Roxy responded, not looking up from their work.
What are you doing?
June asked, walking in to look at the drafting table.
Circuit diagrams,
They responded, pausing and sticking to the back end of their mechanical pencil in their mouth, looking thoughtfully down at the paper in front of them.
working on a revised flow control mechanism for a septic system, and the off the shelf control circuit wasn't the best. Isn't it easier to do that on a computer?
Roxy shrugged and retrieved the pencil from their mouth, tracing another faint line.
Maybe, but I don't like doing like this. Makes me feel more connected to the work, you know?
June wasn't sure that she did know, but she nodded anyway.
Sure. Can I ask you something? Go for it, babe.
They responded, not looking up from their work.
Do you know how to speak Carpathian?
They nodded.
Of course. I've been working with them for like 8 years now. It's a hard language to pick up, but once you get the hang of it, it's really expressive. Cool.
June thought for a second.
And did you talk to them about, stuff?
Stuff? Roxy laughed and put down their pencil. They swiveled their drafting chair to face June and smiled at her. June's heart raced. They were so pretty. This was a highly inappropriate line of thinking for Dr. Professor business. June swallowed.
Yeah, stuff.
June laughed as well.
Like interests and hobbies and stuff.
They smiled and stood up to walk over to June. Softly, Roxy reached out and touched the sides of their partner's face and smiled. They kissed her on the lips and laughed again.
You're unspeakably adorable when you're like this. Yes, we talked about all kinds of things. Not much else to do while waiting for the computer to run numbers. But, not just like human stuff.
They shook their head.
No, they have a lot of really interesting cultural things. Do you know they've got a whole community dedicated to LARPing the whole Prospect Durst thing?
June did not know this.
I need you to help me with a case, Rox, she said. Can you help me translate for the director?
Sure, Roxy smiled as they kissed June again.
How about tomorrow afternoon?
The director agreed to another meeting, although he seemed somewhat reluctant. The other part, and June wasn't sure about this, but it needed to happen eventually, was having Dave actually come in and talk to the director. June had set up a bunch of chairs from the kitchen in a circle so they could all sit together and talk. Roxy was there to act as an interpreter, mainly to allow the director to talk in a way that felt natural to him. Once everybody was seated, June looked over at Casey. You ready?
Oh, you ready? Excellent. Thank you for transcribing, as always. Director, good to see you again. How's the thing going with the Skyball League?
Director gestures.
Yeah, that dude's a dick. Hey, why am I even here?
Director gestures.
He's also wondering why Dave is even here. He doubts his sincerity. Yo, I'm like 2 billion% sincere.
Director gestures.
He's saying that the comically exaggerated percentage really isn't helping your case. Dave, I agree with the director. Can't you be serious for once? I'm like 2,000% serious. Can the record reflect that I'm rolling my eyes? Thanks. We're here because it has come to my attention that the director has some issues with your constant joke suggestions for movies, Dave. Those primo grade A prime cut choice suggestions. Die Hard 3, City Hard, best shit ever. Oh, shut the hell up, Dave. You can't silence art.
Their director gestures.
Oh, hold up. This is complicated.
Director gestures.
Shit, this is nuanced. Let me try this out. Director, my man, you know what? I'm not getting this good. Okay, so he's explaining that his whole culture was often considered to be subservient to the whims of the contracts of suburb itself, to the whole Prospect Durst and Skya thing. And now they've had a few thousand years to actually develop their own thing. Like, they have music and painting and writing and stuff.
Director gestures.
Right, and movies are new to them. They never had the technology before we showed up with a bunch of alchemized tech, and they're just getting used to all this stuff. And they want to explore.
Quick gesture. True. The director in particular wants to explore using movies to tell stories that are actually Carpathian. And Dave keeps trying to make these jokey suggestions that everyone runs with. Hold on. I'm bad at the nuance here. Director, can you help me out? Director gestures. Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. So, partly they want to go with it because they don't really know what to do with cinema. And sometimes the Carpathians aren't familiar with the original work. And sometimes they just want to make Dave happy because they like him. Like, it's weird. Director gestures. Yeah, kind of like he's a god, but also he's their little brother. They have the humor. Yo, WTF? I thought we were buds, director. Director gestures at Dave. The director thought so too, which is why it hurts his feelings so much to keep doing this. Because the Carpathians keep going along with it, and it means they're focusing their resources on making these jokey meme movies instead of making any kind of serious art. Director gestures at Roxy. Right, because there's not a lot of Carpathians that have the skills to make films right now. And you're taking that and basically using it to make your own dumb fucking jokes. Oh. Oh, wow. Yo, I'm feeling super attacked on right now. I'm fucking out. Dave stood up, making a peace sign with his fingers. Peace, assholes. He turned and walked out of the room, slamming the door behind him. June sighed.
Well, that didn't go great.
All right. Text to Davidius Maximus at TurnTech Godhead from June.
Hey, Dave, quick question. What the fuck?
Not June, Bert. What the fuck? Why'd you drag me in there like that and then just shit on me? Like, shit, dog. D-Man and me have been tight for like fucking ever. Now he can't take some meme-tastic goodness? Y'all some assholes today.
Dave, I'm sorry, but this isn't that simple. The Carpathians have a whole culture. You can't just disregard that.
June, I love you like a G fucking D sister, but that's some fucking bull to the shit. Like, you might as well tell me I'm culturally appropriating their shit.
I don't think this is the same as that.
Man, kiss my ass, June. I'm fucking out. Text between Dave and Carkalicious at Carkalicious Carcat. Yo, you gonna be home soon? I got mad attacked by June and her gang today.
I'm still annoyed you changed my screen name, and I don't know how to get it back to what it was. But okay, I guess tell me what happened.
They all start saying I'm being an ass to the director for giving him these dope ass meme movie ideas. It's like, shit, yo. It's not like I force him to make this shit. And they be acting like I'm just being an ass.
Oh, fucking boy. I love you a lot, Dave. Like, more than anyone ever. I need you to understand how much I love you before I say this next part. Dave, you can be kind of an asshole sometimes.
Oh shit, did the goddamn June PC pod people get to you too?
Dude, can you get off your shit for like 1 fucking second? God, I know you're just being funny, and that's fine. I love your sense of humor most of the time. But you have a tendency to ignore when it makes other people uncomfortable, or just act like they're being babies about it.
Dude.
God damn it, let me finish. You act like it's always no big deal. And usually it's not. But if someone is telling you to your face that the way you're acting is hurting them, why the fuck do you just have to keep going? What the entire fuck, Dave? Why can't you just lay off when someone asks?
Uh, shit, dude, Carcat, can you give me a call?
What the fuck?
Hey,
What the fuck?
Carcat, I'm sorry.
What the? Wait, what?
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have talked to you like that.
Okay, now who's the pod person?
Yeah, I guess I kind of deserve that one. Really, I'm sorry. I guess I'm still used to defending myself all the time. Like back when I was a teenager, I had to basically be ready all the time in case some shit went down. Didn't get much better fighting for my life against everything Suburb had out for us. I know that shit is like 10 fucking years ago, but God.
Dave, you know you're allowed to be vulnerable, right? Like, we've talked about this. I don't know. It just feels different when everyone telling me I did something wrong. And I really didn't mean to hurt the director's feelings like that. I don't think I'm the one you need to be telling all this to.
Oh, thank you for being here. Thank you for being in on the stream. And this will be on YouTube, so if you want to hear the rest of it or you want to pop back in later, I'll probably be doing this for at least another hour. So, yeah, thank you for coming. Text between Dave and the Directinator at Shellbound Cinemaphile. Hey, I'm sorry, dude. The way I got at June's, that was like some righteously uncool shit, like the most righteously uncool ever. I shouldn't have jumped down your shit like that, like at all. With the movie thing, I thought it was all just fun, and you were hurting five real about this stuff. Shit, I don't expect you to be cool with me, but I'm sorry. Dave, I know you mean well and you're swell and all, but you need to realize what I'm doing here. I'm trying to make Carapacian film a thing, a real art form. Your memes are a lot of fun a lot of the time, but you have no sense of grace, my good man. Okay, ouch. But also, that's fair. Yeah, shit dog. What can I do to make this better? What do you need from me? If you want to help, be supportive. I could really use a good chap to help with marketing and distribution if you could do that. Hells to the yeah. Just call me Dave Strider, executive motherfucking producer. I appreciate the sentiment, my good man, but I will absolutely not do that. Kelly was just getting off the Callie was just getting off the phone when June walked into the kitchen to make lunch. She could hear them finishing the tail end of their conversation
Yes?
and pause.
Okay, that sounds lovely. Thank you for calling.
They hung up the house phone, a quaint throwback to a simpler time on old Earth, but it was convenient for folks that needed to call one of the residents, and it didn't necessarily matter which one. Kelly turned and saw June.
Oh, hello, darling, they said. I just got off the phone with Dave. He will not be returning for another meeting.
June felt her face falling. Oh. But Callie smiled.
Oh, do not worry. It is on account of good news. Apparently, Dave and the director have settled their differences on their own time.
June smiled, but inside she felt a little disappointed. She'd really wanted to help, and the session had gone so badly, and now the director and Dave were just good again? She supposed there was more to it than that, but it still felt anticlimactic somehow. As she was pondering this, Roxy walked into the kitchen as well. They saw June's face, turned to Callie, and asked, "What's her deal?" Callie shrugged.
I believe she is disappointed because Dave and the director have reconciled on their own. I'm not disappointed, June said, a little bit defensively. I just wanted to help.
Roxy walked over and took one of June's hands. A moment later, Callie was holding the other. "June," Roxy said, "I'm sure you helped. Maybe you didn't get to say some big smart thing about feelings or whatever stuff you were going to do to make things better, but you still got them talking about the problem." Callie nodded.
Sometimes the best way is to simply open the door to the conversation and let it take place on its own terms. Otherwise, you may end up forcing the issue and making things worse.
June's face lit up with a half smile.
I know. I just want to do well with the whole therapy thing, you know?
Roxy and Callie exchanged glances and nodded at each other. "June, you're doing fine with the whole therapy thing," Roxy said.
The best,
Callie added. And together they leaned in and each kissed one of June's cheeks. She blushed, smiled, and immediately felt better about herself. All right. Just take a drink of water. Yeah. I love them too. I love writing their relationship. I don't do it enough, but I'm gonna probably go into that more. I sort of pick a character that I'm I'm glad you liked it. I sort of pick a character that I'm like gonna focus on for a while and then I write about them until I feel like it's getting repetitive or I want to dig into someone else and then I write about a different character. So I wrote more about Roxy when I did Heir to the Listless. Yes, they do. The AU as of like the third or fourth story in the series is June Roxy Kelly, and the other poly M pairing or shipping is Vriss Rezi Conrose, which is it takes a few stories for that to happen, but it is a thing as of now. which is like someone sort of like suggested it as being a thing in a chat or Discord, and I was like, yeah, I do like that idea. And then I wrote like 17,000 words about it. Um, and then that was a thing, and I just kept running with it. So if you want to get me to do a thing, you just need to like get me to think it's a kind of good idea, and then I'll just like go. Um, anyway, so we'll read another Dr. June. This one is all Kanaya and let me just check. This is Kanaya and June, I think almost exclusively. Yeah, this one is very like single room scene kind of thing. I actually like this one a lot. All right, this one is chapter 3. Same fic. I believe I am an imposter. Dr. June helps a friend struggling to find the meaning in her actions. The phone was ringing. June wasn't awake enough for this to fully register at first. Her phone was ringing. June struggled out from under the metaphorical blanket that was sleep, and the very literal blanket that was the blanket covering her, Callie, and Roxy. Her partners were sound asleep. Callie neatly propped on their back, and Roxy sprawled out, half leaning on Callie's shoulder and snoring loudly. June extricated herself from the tangle and reached over to grab her phone from the nightstand.
Oh,
June could hear the sleep in her voice.
who is this?
Yes, June?
Kanaya's voice was quiet on the other end.
Is this perhaps a bad time?
June blinked thickly. She had no idea what time it was.
Kanaya? I'm sorry, what happened?
Oh,
Kanaya said, her voice sounding surprised.
I'm sorry. To be honest, I had not planned this conversation any further. I had a matter I wish to discuss with you.
And it was an emergency?
Kanaya paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was very soft.
No, I suppose it is not an emergency.
June rolled her eyes, even though Kanaya couldn't see it.
Okay, come by tomorrow and we'll talk. Go to sleep, Kanaya.
She hung up the phone and set it back on the nightstand. With only a brief second thought about what was keeping Kanaya up so late, June wormed her way back under the covers and lay down. Her arm laid across Roxy's chest and touching Callie's stomach. Closing her eyes, June drifted back to sleep. Kanaya showed up early that morning. Not nearly as early as the ungodly hour she had first called at, but early enough that June was just getting ready for the day. Roxy had just left for the work they were doing it for the new Alternian Planning Commission, and Callie was already sequestered in their writing room until they could meet their morning's goal. June was just finishing her morning coffee-adjacent sugar-based beverage when she heard a tentative knock on the front door. June walked over to investigate and saw Kanaya through the window to the side of the door. The troll was standing on the front porch and wringing her hands, looking nervously around. As soon as June opened the door, she bustled in and put her hands up in front of her, palms pressed together.
Oh, thank you very much for having me over at such an early hour. I truly did not mean to alarm you with my late call. I simply felt the urgent need to speak to you about something. In your capacity as Dr. June Egbert, MD, PhD, Esquire, of course.
June nodded.
Ah, yes, of course.
She was still a little on the far side of tired to feel much like doing the doctor professor bit right then, but she smiled anyway.
I might be a bit on the low energy side this morning, but you're welcome to come in and have a seat.
Kanaya smiled at this but said nothing. Together, they walked back to the office space that June used for her therapy sessions. To June's surprise, Casey was already setting up their stenographer's machine in the corner. June started and took a drink from her not really coffee.
How are you up so early?
Casey replied. June's face flushed.
Now, it is none of your business what keeps us all up late at night.
Casey shrugged, a strange gesture for a giant bipedal salamander, and finished setting up their equipment. Kanaya walked directly to the couch designated for the patients and sat delicately on it, as if she were riding a horse side saddle. I've got to stop looking at chat while I'm trying to read. She neatly folded her hands in her lap and waited patiently for June to finish getting ready. Once she'd settled in and put her things down, June nodded to Casey to start transcribing, turned to Kanaya and grinned.
So, what did you need to talk about? Is something specific wrong?
No, not exactly.
Okay. Is everything okay at home?
Why, yes, thank you.
Oh, okay. Is everything good between you and your partners?
Yes, thank you for asking.
Yes, thank you. I can hear her tone as well.
I do not have a tone.
Tell me about how things are going with you, Rose, Vriska, and Terezi. Are there any recent changes I should know about?
Absolutely not. We are as steady and stable as ever.
I can see that. Stop the transcription.
Kanai sat delicately on the side of the couch and began to cry. She produced an embroidered handkerchief from a pocket and dabbed at her eyes, trying to smile.
I'm so sorry you must see me like this, June,
she said, holding back a small sob.
I feel that I'm very much out of sorts at the moment, and have brought this squarely to your doorstep.
June had no idea why Kanai was starting to cry, but she felt her heart hurting for the troll. June reached out, extending a hand toward Kanaya. The troll looked up from behind her handkerchief, smiled, and grasped June's hand.
Thank you very much, June. You're truly a good friend. I can see why Rose trusted you so much all those years.
June started. Is everything okay with you and Rose? Are you and Vriska, Terezi? I hate to poke something that's maybe sore, but this all seems very unexpected. I thought you were all doing pretty well.
Kanaya nodded.
I understand. The truth is we are doing quite well. We have figured out many of the dynamics that keep our relationship functioning smoothly while remaining invigorating to all the participants.
Then what's wrong?
June asked, leaning forward.
I'm really sorry, Is there some Alternian thing I'm not getting here?
She shook her head and dabbed her eyes again with the corner of the handkerchief with a small KM embroidered on it. In light of the expanded nature of Kanaya's relationship status, it was wise she had decided to simply keep her name when she married Rose.
It's not any one thing. It is, in fact, frightfully hard to put into words. I feel as if I am wasting your time, which only makes me feel worse.
June squeezed Kanaya's hand.
Hey, I know we maybe didn't know each other that well during the game, but it's been 8 years, Kanaya.
Kanaya sniffled, and June kept talking.
I don't know how to put this without sounding like a goof, but you're like a big sister to me, or maybe a little bit of a mom, an aunt. Do trolls have aunts?
Kanaya smiled.
I understand the meaning, June.
June grinned.
Yeah, you've always been super close to me. You made me that dress way back, remember?
Brilliant blue silk, the first outfit of many. A chance for her to be herself for the first time in a lifetime. Kanaya remembered. She smiled softly.
Yes, June, of course.
So yeah, June said, feeling a bit awkward. Whatever it is, you can tell me.
Yes,
Kanaya said. She drew back her hand from June's grasp and clutched the handkerchief to her chest.
Perhaps that is why I find this so difficult. You have always seen me as one of your elder human relatives who provides guidance and comfort. But I fear that my current predicament is quite a silly one in the end.
She trailed off. June was feeling more confused by the minute.
Oh, geez, can you just tell me already?
Kanaya blushed. She fumbled into her pockets and took out her phone, a sleek black Carapacian phone housed inside a clear protective case.
I think it would be perhaps easier to show you the part of the original source of my distress.
She tapped the phone a few times. When she was done, she handed it over to June, who looked down to see that Kanaya had opened a web page. This is a writing website, Gamma. Hi, Luminous Scrivener. I screwed up the chapter buttons while I was doing the fake thing. This is only supposed to have one chapter. Ignore the top. Rating, teen and up audiences. No archive warnings apply. Categories, female, female. Fandom, The Dark Umbrage. Relationships, Rosella/Reader OC. Characters, Rosella and Mary Kanayam. Additional tags, pining, romance, poetry, crush, OC insert, language English. Published 50/20/421. Updated 50/20/421. 450 words. No comments, no kudos, 3 hits. A Reflection on My True State of Being by Luminous Scrivener. Summary. Mary Kanayam reflects on the state of her life. Rosella was quite beautiful was something that Mary Kanayam thought on a regular basis. But more than just being beautiful, she was also extremely talented. Mary had several partners, all of whom were very talented in their own ways. Mary knew that she had her own talents, but lately she had begun to feel doubt in her. After all, what was she compared to the tactical brilliance of the pirate queen, the keen mind of the detective, or the creative spirit of Rosella, the first writer of the Guild of the Learned Ones? In such company, Mary felt wholly and completely inadequate. Despite her own accomplishments and skills, it did not seem to matter, because they would all see her for the fraud she really was. That was definitely going to happen, and probably very soon. And it cuts off from there. I'm sorry. I fixed the chapter buttons for later. I put so much time into the next part. I spent so long on that in Google Chrome, just like messing with the CSS. It was worth it, though. June handed the phone back to Kanaya.
This is the fanfiction website that Carcat made with Mina, right?
Kanaya nodded. June nodded.
And the Dark Umbrage is Rose's latest series. I'm still working my way through the second one.
That is correct. That's a very good one, but it really starts to pick up in volume 3,
Kanaya said beatifically. I didn't think I would actually have to say that word when I wrote it. It is the best time to come in.
Cool. And I'm gonna assume that Luminous Scrivener is you, given the profile picture.
Kanaya blushed and didn't say anything, but her pointed avoidance of June's gaze made this answer self-evident.
Neat,
June said. Then she paused for a moment.
And I'm gonna guess again and say that Mary Kanayam is a self-insert character you're making to pair up with Rose's already obvious Rosilla self-insert character.
Kanaya's face exploded in a flush of jade, and she began to fidget with her handkerchief, turning it over and worrying it in her hands.
Was it that obvious?
Her question was a barely audible whisper. June felt her heart swelling, and she had to desperately suppress the urge to cry.
Kanaya,
She started to sniffle.
that is the sweetest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Kanaya was crying. June leaned in and reached to put a hand on her knee, trying to comfort her.
Oh, hey, did I say something wrong? What's wrong, Kanaya?
She she dabbed at her eyes again, but the tears were still bubbling up and streaking down her perfectly done makeup, leaving small streaks.
It is a bunch of garbage, June.
June cocked her head to the side and frowned.
What do you mean? I read it just now. It's not garbage. It's actually really sweet. Has Rhodes seen this?
Kanaya shook her head.
No, she hasn't. And neither have Vriska nor Terezi. They were all going to be in the story. I invented characters for them, and was going to have all of us.
She trailed off again and fidgeted in place. June thought she looked profoundly uncomfortable.
What's the matter? This seems cute. They're in a relationship already, and I'm assuming this isn't going to be like a sex story, right?
Kanaya's face flushed again.
I would never write such a thing for public consumption.
June felt this last bit she added was a very fine distinction indeed, but she wasn't going to press the issue.
Okay, sure, but it's sweet. You're writing about your girlfriends. That seems nice. What's the problem?
Was it not clear from the subtext of the work?
Kanaya asked, looking up at June. June wasn't sure that a fragment of a first chapter could necessarily be said to have much subtext, but she didn't say it.
That Mary feels completely outmatched by the women she's in love with. They are all incredibly talented in their own right, and Mary is she's simply kind of there. Maybe she's good at talking to them, but what good is that when they deserve so much more?
Has Mary considered that maybe she's being too hard on herself? June asked. I mean, Rosella sounds amazing, and I'm interested to know more about the Pirate Queen and Detective.
Kanaya smiled, her fangs poking from beneath her top lip.
Oh, they're quite fascinating, and also very beautiful. The detail is plot relevant, I assure you.
June had a very hard time believing Kanaya's earlier statement about this not being a story that got into some rather blue territory, but she left it alone.
Okay, that sounds wonderful, but maybe Mary has things to offer as well.
Like what? Being fussy, making clothing? We can alchemize clothing.
Kanaya sounded almost disgusted as she said it, and her face fell.
I mean, in the stories, they can use magic to make clothing.
What if Mary was working on writing to impress the others, to maybe get closer to Rosella, who...
June struggled to remember if Rosella had been a writer in the books. She was basically Rose. She must have been.
Who wrote the Dark Compendium. That was what it was called. Maybe Mary is trying to get closer to her by writing something of her own.
Kanaya sniffled.
Perhaps, but Mary's writing is garbage and not fit for human or troll consumption. Whatever the Dark Umbrage has instead of trolls, I mean.
June was quite sure there were no equivalent to trolls in the books.
In any case, those are her three main character traits,
Kanaya continued.
bad writing, making useless clothes, and being fussy.
She looked like she was about to break down crying.
I know one of the women who Mary made a dress for, and it meant an awful lot to her.
June said softly. She could feel the tears burning behind her own eyes.
That she showed such a simple act of kindness to someone who needed it more than anything.
June watched as Kanaya's face transformed. Her eyes widened and her mouth hung open, and her eyes were a constellation of tears.
I,
She couldn't even finish the sentence.
I bet
June continued.
that she's done a lot of things like that. Like the times where she sat up with Rosella when the nightmares wouldn't stop, or when she spent an afternoon planning a picnic for the detective and made sure to pick foods with interesting colors specifically for her, or when Mary spent an extra long time reading aloud to no one in the library because the pirate queen was hanging out and pretending to be doing nothing, but she was actually listening to the story being read.
Kanaya sniffled.
They told you about those things.
About lots of things. I normally wouldn't say anything. I take this therapy thing seriously, but I feel like you need to hear it.
June leaned back and tented her fingers, putting them in front of her chin and sighing.
It's easy to put yourself down, to tell yourself you're just not good enough, or to compare yourself to other people who are successful, especially when those are people you care about.
She looked right at Kanaya, who bowed her head.
It's hard.
Her voice was barely a whisper.
It's so hard not to feel like that. I don't want to tell them how it feels because I don't want to look like that. Alternia didn't encourage seeking attention, not unless you were a high blood, and sometimes, most times, not even then.
June sighed and pressed her fingers to the bridge of her nose.
You're not on Alternia, Kanaya. You can be what you want here. You're creative. I think it's normal for someone who's as creative as you to seek out a little bit of attention for what they create. You want others to enjoy it. I don't see what's wrong with that.
Kanaya began to smile again.
I suppose that is true. Do you really like the dress I made that much?
8 years. It had been 8 years since she'd come out, and 8 years since Kanaya made her that beautiful dress that flowed like the wind around her. One of the first acts that had made her truly feel like she was accepted as herself.
I still have it, June said. It's hanging up in my closet, and every time I go to get dressed, I see it, and it reminds me.
She sighed.
It reminds me of how you never once questioned me. You were just happy to be able to do something to show how much you cared about me.
Kanaya was crying again, but it seemed different now. She was still smiling. June stood up and walked forward. Kanaya opened her arms, and June bent down to wrap her in a warm hug.
Kanaya, no matter what, you're doing something you love. You do so much for the people you care about. You can be proud of that. You can show them who you are, and they'll be happy to see what you're creating.
Even silly fan fiction that is transparently about myself and them?
Kanaya asked, her face half buried in June's shoulder.
Yes, Kanaya. Even silly fan fiction that's obviously about your big gay crush on your partners.
Kanaya's face grew warm. After a moment, she let go and sighed to herself.
I apologize, June, for taking up so much of your time with this nonsense. I was perhaps being extremely silly about the whole thing. I do hope you will forgive me.
It's fine,
June said.
I love to help my friends.
Kanaya smiled and pulled out her phone. She absentmindedly clicked. June saw her eyes grow wide and her mouth was gaping open. She looked like she was about to cry again, and June stood up without even thinking about why. She needed to act.
What's wrong?
June could hear the worry in her voice. Kanaya laughed. She closed her eyes and laughed until she was doubled over, and a very different kind of tear was streaming down her cheeks. June was thoroughly confused.
What?
Kanaya opened her eyes and turned the phone so June could see the screen. All right, now we have the comments section, which I fixed the buttons on. Hide comments, 3. Tentacle Treaties, Red Glare, and one guest left kudos on the work. Tentacle Treaties.
This is well written and certainly grabbed my interest, if I do say so myself. In fact, I'm very much looking forward to seeing how the main character resolves her painfully obvious feelings for Rosella, the pirate queen, and the detective.
I would assume that the end result would be a love story that would very much be worth reading, especially if the author is as devoted to improving her writing as she is to everything else in her life.
Red glare.
I love this so much and I can't wait to see what happens. Quick question. Does the detective get to have a dragon? I think she should definitely get a dragon at some point. It's important to her character development.
And a guest comment from Definitely Not Vriska.
I'm definitely not Vriska because she doesn't read fanfic because it's for wigglers and human babies. But if I were Vriska, I'd be pretty interested in the whole Pirate Queen thing going on. She sounds like she's probably pretty hot, and I think she and Kanayam should definitely kiss at some point. Actually, they should all definitely kiss at some point. Anyway, this isn't Vriska, so definitely don't expect her to bother you to finish more of this story until you write it.
June couldn't help herself. She laughed. Kanaya laughed. Kanaya dropped the phone on the couch and hugged June again, a tight embrace that completely pulled June into her until all she could smell was Kanaya's soft perfume. June closed her eyes.
We all care about you, Kanaya,
June said.
and those three, they care about you the most.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, I actually really liked writing that. So, fun piece of author commentary. The stuff that is done unconsciously or that works out better than you expected to. When I originally did the first screen, I was going to have them comment, but the first screen I just kind of like picked random numbers. And thank you so much. I love writing Kanaya. And I picked 3 hits, just like it's a low number. I just 3, sure. And then when I got to the end, it's like, oh, yes, I did that on purpose. The 3 of them were reading this while she was talking to June. That's exactly what I planned all along. So, yeah, I had fun with that one. So I figure I'm probably going to do this for one more story. And I hadn't really planned out what I was going to read. I had some thoughts. I guess everything else I've written is heavy to some extent, but I guess the question is, do y'all want to hear about the sort of down-tempo Jade Resi story that we've already read the resolution of, so at least it won't be super depressing in the end? Or do you want to hear the weird time loop story with some real heavy shit in the middle that gets really nice at the end, and is not super heavy in the beginning? I'll probably read one chapter, and the first chapter is not like super awful and triggering. The time loop, cool. I like the time loop story. This is the first like big fic I wrote, and it's actually, I think it's really good. Cool. All right, we will read this. So, for background, the only thing you need to know is that Vriska's back. This is like 4 years after they've made Earthsea. June is June. Some of the stuff, the relationships have already happened. Honestly, when I wrote this, a lot of the stuff that I wrote in later, like the Jade Resi stuff, I hadn't even thought of yet, so it's not really a part of this. But Vriska being back is kind of the only thing you really need to know. And she came back and just met up with Terezi, which you'll see in context. And if anyone here was reading when we did the Aradia story, the narrator in the previous universe is a thing. They're basically like the narrative voice of the dying universe, so that becomes important later. Anyway, this is a piece of each of our hearts. Summary: it has been 4 years since the end of the game and the creation of Earthsea. Rosa Lalonde and Kanaya Merriam have settled into married life. June Egbert, Roxy Lalonde, and Callie are happily living together. Even Dave Strider and Karkat Vantas seem to be about as happy as they've ever been. In the small hours of the night, a call is received that will set events into motion that will forever alter their lives and throw into question their conception of reality itself. Story has evolved. They're forever whole, blah, 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 blah. This does have triggering chapters. I will content warn them. The way I did this when I was writing it is I would content warn in the beginning and do a non-triggering summary at the end. When I'm reading, I will content warn the hell out of them, and that will give you a chance to bail if any of that stuff is triggering. The big ones are abuse and alcohol abuse. Domestic violence is talked about. There's a couple of real not great major character deaths, um, and those are kind of the big ones. The first chapter does talk about nightmares. If anyone's uh, got triggers related to like traumatic nightmares, they're not described in explicit detail or anything, but that is talked about. So, Chapter 1, Rose Lalonde, first cycle, dead of the night. And that first cycle thing is important, so yeah, pay attention to that. Rose woke from the dream, drenched in sweat and shaking. The worst dreams were never about what she'd been through physically, never about the pain she'd felt when she died, never about the injuries she'd received in battle. Those aches came to her when she was awake, faint reminders of a life she'd once lived in a time that now felt like 1,000 years ago. The worst dreams were never about fear, not the dread of losing everyone and everything she cared about, not the creeping terror of not knowing if she would live to see the next day, or live to see the face of the woman she loved again. Those dreams came at night, but they faded with waking like a fog that quickly burned away in the daylight. The worst dreams, the ones that haunted Rose through to the waking and out the other side to the still hours of the night when she was alone with her thoughts, those dreams were about losing her very self. Dreams of how the abominations of the furthest ring had worked their way inside her mind and turned her into a shell, devoid of everything that made her who she was. In those dreams, Rose was there all over again, alone. The horror terrors were inside of her mind, singing to her. It sounded so odd to call it that, but at the same time it fit, telling her that she belonged to them. Everything was just as it has been, just as it was, just as it would always be. Rose woke from the dream drenched in sweat, and she thanked whatever cosmic force had brought her to this place that she wasn't alone. Kanaya, Rose's wife of nearly 4 years, was sleeping peacefully in the bed next to her. Kanaya's soft gray skin glowed faintly in the dim bedroom, casting a soft light that was eerily similar to the faint moonlight in the near corners of the bedroom. Everything beyond was steeped in deep shadow, and the thought of it made Rose wince unconsciously. She steadied herself, took a deep breath, and silently swung her legs out over the edge of the bed. Careful not to wake Kanaya, Rose padded quietly to the bedroom window and glanced out. The moon was up, and while Earthsea's moon was ever so slightly different from the one she remembered from her childhood, Rose found the sight to be immensely familiar and comforting. I need a goddamn drink. The thought hit her with a suddenness and ferocity that Rose was completely unprepared for. She took another breath, held it, and let it out slowly. Distraction. I need a distraction. She repeated the mantra in her head and kept breathing. She stared at the moon and tried to mentally place herself there, out in the expanse with the glittering light of the stars that twinkled with majesty but hid deeper, more terrifying truths lurking behind them. This isn't working. Rose looked back into the bedroom, over at Kanaya's gently slumbering form. The troll looked so graceful in sleep. Honestly, she looked so graceful basically all the time. Rose smiled, crossing her arms over her chest and shivering. She needed a distraction. Walking back to the bed, somewhat less quietly than she'd originally been, Rose sat down on the edge and reached over towards her wife. In this universe, they basically copied the solar system. They basically, or at least the Earth and the Sun. So it's basically Earth, just not Earth, for plot convenience reasons. No. Kanaya, are you awake? Rose asked softly, reaching down to brush Kanaya's shoulder. The troll mumbled and shifted.
I must admit that I was not previously, but now I believe that I am.
Kanaya sounded sleepy, but not annoyed.
Is there something that is bothering you?
Kanaya turned over as she said this, and Rose could see her half-squinted eyes and wrinkled-up nose. The faint glow that had been emanating from Kanaya's skin dissipated as if it had never been there in the first place.
Something is indeed bothering you. I can see by the way your face looks.
Kanaya's eyes opened fully, and her expression changed. The sleepy confusion lifted, and her brow furrowed.
You had bad dreams again.
Rose nodded. Not just bad dreams. That dream again. The eldritch terrors of the furthest ring, their horrible singing cries, the absolute certainty that she had never left their influence. Kanaya lifted herself onto her elbows and scooted closer to where Rose sat on the edge of the bed. Without saying anything else, Kanaya put her long arms around her wife's torso, gathering up the pale purple of her pajamas and pressing her forehead against Rose's back.
Do you need me to repeat the words?
Kanaya asked the question in a soft voice. Rose nodded wordlessly.
The horror terrors are gone. The furthest ring is gone. You are here in this world you have chosen. I am here with you, for however long you'll have me.
As Kanaya spoke, Rose felt the tension starting to drop away from her shoulders. She settled back, letting the troll hold her closer. Forever, Rose said in the barest whisper. She could feel Kanaya's head nod against her back. Please, forever. She heard Kanaya say something muffled into her back and felt a kiss between her shoulder blades. Slowly, Rose eased herself down onto the bed, navigating past Kanaya and lying back, staring into her wife's face. Kanaya smiled slightly and reached down to brush a stray hair from Rose's face. Wrinkling her nose, Rose smiled back.
I am not annoyed that you woke me up,
Kanaya said,
in case that was the thing that you were perhaps thinking.
Rose closed her eyes.
Yeah, sorry about that. Am I to assume that everything in the dream happened the same way as the last time?
Rose nodded. Same exact thing. I don't understand what it means.
Perhaps the meaning is not especially relevant.
Kanaya's voice was soft, but Rose could hear the edge of concern in it.
Perhaps it is simply the mind's way of coping with something unfathomable.
I have to tell her, or I'll never get back to sleep. Kanaya, I felt like drinking again when I woke up. Rose held her breath and waited.
That is perhaps an understandable reaction to trauma, given your particular history.
There was no trace of judgment in her voice. You're not mad? Rose asked quietly. Rose heard Kanaya kind of half laugh. She opened her eyes and saw the troll smiling at her, her hair falling over her delicate facial features. Her fangs stuck out a little on the bottom of her upturned mouth, and Rose couldn't help but smile back and blush. What's funny? She asked, trying to sound more indignant than she actually felt.
When have I ever expressed any degree of anger over something you obviously have little direct control over and felt extremely guilty about? I feel like I would have been doing a very poor job of loving you if that were the case. Or is this one of the cultural misunderstandings rearing its ugly head? I do not think I have the capacity to be mad at you, even if I want that to be my response.
Rose laughed. Not the small noise that Kanaya had just made, but a full-on chuckle. She couldn't stop grinning now, no matter how stupid she looked. Kanaya screwed her eyebrows up and looked puzzled, and Rose reached out to place a hand on the troll's cheek. No, I didn't want you to be mad at me. It's an old habit. I still feel like I'm living in the shadows of my past and all that. She saw Kanaya's face relax at this.
That is something I think most of us can relate to here.
Rose nodded. Hey, I love you, Kanaya. Really. Kanaya reached up to brush Rose's hand softly.
I love you as well, Rose.
She paused, but her mouth remained open until she spoke again.
Do you feel better? Do you still feel the need to consume alcohol?
No, I think I'll be okay. Rose wrapped her hand around Kanaya's and squeezed slightly. I'll let you know if I'm not okay. As if cued by some unseen present, 2 phones began to ring in the room. Kanaya's phone, stored neatly on the bedside table, was the closest. Rose's was somewhere under her clothes on the floor, and Rose tumbled out of bed to scramble for it. Kanaya was already picking up her phone and answering when Rose got to hers. A picture of June Egbert's grinning face lit up the screen. Kanaya was already on her phone, listening intently to something. Why the hell is June calling so late? Something must have happened. She quickly palmed the phone and slid the screen to unlock the call. June, what's wrong? Rose asked without hesitation. She heard her friend's voice on the other end of the line, practically shouting.
Rose, you gotta come to Cantown Square. I mean, like right now. You gotta get here.
June paused, and it sounded like she was breathing heavily, as if she'd been running. Rose looked over at Kanaya. Her eyes were wide, and her mouth hung slightly agape. Rose motioned her confusion to her wife, who only shook her head and pointed at the phone, mouthing, I'm not sure.
Oh my God.
June's voice came back as she caught her breath.
Seriously, you gotta get down here now.
Why? Rose asked. June, what's happening?
It's Vriska.
Rose heard the name and felt goosebumps raise all along her arms and run back down her back.
Vriska came back.
And I'm going to read the next chapter because it's shorter than I thought, and I forgot how much I do the cliffhangers in this one, like all the fucking time. Chapter 2. And they don't know that Vriska's come back. I probably should have mentioned that. This is like right when she gets back, like the same day. Um, Chapter 2, Kanaya Mariam. First cycle, a short time later.
I still have no idea why she does not want us to fly there.
Kanaya tapped out a sentence on the phone as she walked quickly along under the moonlight. Rose was a few steps ahead, having already hung up the phone.
I still have no idea why you don't want us flying.
She's talking to Terezi. This is before I really refined the text logs. So.
She's still kind of freaked out by all this.
I understand completely based on our brief phone conversation. This still seems unnecessary.
Listen, I gotta go. See you in a bit.
Kanaya grit her teeth and muttered words under her breath she wouldn't normally deign to speak. Terezi had been almost painfully vague on the phone after burying the lead of Vriska Circuit has suddenly arrived on Earth-C. Oh, by the way, I didn't bother to tell anyone for 12 hours and decided to call June in the middle of the night because of reasons no one else can comprehend. Apparently, from what Kanaya had been able to gather, comparing notes with Rose after June finished talking, Vriska had just kind of appeared in the middle of a field next to Terezi the day before. Terezi had then, for unspecified reasons, taken Vriska and just kind of hung out all day without bothering to tell anyone else. She had then, at around 2 a.m., called June Egbert to let her know what had happened and also to ask everyone to please not fly anywhere to see Vriska so as to not freak her out, a statement that was maddeningly obtuse. Roxy and Callie knew that as soon as June did, on account of them all living together, and June had called Rose immediately after they finished talking. Terezi had spoken to Carcat briefly, which meant Dave knew what was happening, and then called Kanaya and basically just told her to get to the Cantown Center, and that was it. So she and Rose, still dressed basically in their PJs, were making the mile-long trek to the town center without really knowing why any of this was happening in the first place.
Oh, yes, we are indeed off to an auspicious start to this day.
All of this was starting to feel very off. Rose's dream had woken her up in a state of terror, if her general demeanor and desire to drink, however fleeting, were anything to go by. Terezi was being short with information, and June seemed so excited that she couldn't stay on the phone long enough to really tell them anything beyond the basics. Kanaya walked a bit faster to catch up to Rose, who was looking ahead with a scowl on her face.
Are you going to be okay?
Kanaya asked, reaching out to touch her wife's elbow. Rose nodded.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting this, of all things. I have a feeling this is going to be a weird fucking day.
Kanaya didn't respond, but she was inclined to agree with Rose. Everything felt like it was piling up to something, and Kanaya wasn't exactly sure what, and that scared her more than anything. She didn't necessarily believe in fate, per se, but this all had an awfully fate-sounding ring to it. The rest of the walk to the Cantown Center was silent. Rose looked troubled, and Kanaya couldn't blame her. 4 years. 4 years had passed without a word from Veriska. Terezi had been out looking for her more than once. She had found nothing. In all honesty, this wasn't making a whole lot of sense, and that was worrying. Cantown itself was comprised of large corrugated steel structures, their resemblance to literal cans giving rise to the name. They had been placed there largely by Jade Harley. As the only space player to have reached God tier, Jade had often ended up as the de facto engineer for a lot of the more complicated aspects of the new society on Earth-C. Though the cans looked quaint, they formed the core of what was essentially a modern city. Lights ran between them, illuminating the early morning with a faint yellow glow. At the very heart of it all was the Cantown Center, officially the Cantown Municipal Hall, a large and rather grand building made not of steel but of stone and mortar. At the insistence of the Cantown mayor, the building had been constructed almost entirely by the Carpassians without assistance from the humans or trolls. It was a testament to the industriousness of their people and a way for them to establish their own identity. The building had stood for years as a symbol of hope that Earthsea was founded on. Smack dab in the middle of that hope, Kanaya could see as they approached was a figure that she had almost given up on ever seeing again. Vriska Circuit was sitting quietly, her shoulders slumped, her long black hair flowing over her shoulders. Her clothing was just as Kanaya remembered it, and, despite a bit of grime, looked almost brand new. Terezi Pyrope, wearing the exact same t-shirt she always wore, sat very close to Vriska. Terezi had her arm around the other troll's waist and appeared to be squeezing her in close. As Kanaya got close enough to see the detail in Vriska's face, she felt her breath falter. Vriska looked older, not physically. She didn't appear to have aged basically at all, but she had a strangely haggard look in her eyes. It was as if she hadn't slept in forever and was running herself down to the last ounce of energy. Vriska looked up as Rose and Kanaya approached. Oh, hey, Kanaya. Vriska trailed off and looked down at the ground. She seemed strangely embarrassed. Rose was the first of them to speak. Do you mind telling me what the hell is going on here? She seemed more confused than angry, despite the yelling.
Don't talk to her like that.
Terezi's voice cut in, rough yet strangely melodic.
She's been through a lot, and she's going to talk to everyone. She wanted to talk to June and you two. Dave and Carr can't live too far away.
You are aware, Rose said with a sharp glance at Terezi, a gesture she thought would probably be lost on the blind troll, that several of us can fly, right?
Shh,
Terezi hissed through her teeth.
I know that, but I didn't want to freak Chris out. Anyway, June's coming back now.
Kanaya was about to interject when she finally heard the faint footfalls from inside the Cantown Center. The door behind Terezi and Vriska opened, and out came a weirdly cheery June Egbert, clutching a couple of blankets. She handed them to Vriska with a smile. Vriska tried to smile back, but it just came across as a tired kind of half quirk of her blue-tinted lips. She looked around the assembled group and down at her shoes, as if suddenly struck with a strong desire to sink to the ground and disappear.
Come on,
Terezi said quietly.
you can tell them what you told me. It's okay. We went through this.
Terezi leaned over and smiled, taking her free hand and placing her fingers in with Vriska's. Vriska started to speak and paused, continuing to look down at her shoes. She shook her head slowly. I don't know if I can. It seems so fucking crazy now. Kanaya stepped closer to Vriska and leaned down a bit. She adopted her softest, most maternal tone before she spoke.
Perhaps it is something that will resolve itself as you begin the conversation. We have all been through quite a lot that would be labeled as crazy after all.
She smiled down at Vriska, who looked back in a way that was decidedly measured. Yeah, okay, Miriam. You've got it. Years ago, but no, it was the other narrative voice. Years ago, but not many, or perhaps many years ago, many hundreds of years ago. Time is, after all, a relativistic concept. Vriska Circuit found herself in a place she did not understand. At first she was furious. She remembered her fight against Lord English and the black hole yawning wide and pulling them inside. But for some reason she did not die. She found herself alone. Alone with thoughts she would prefer not to have, about all the people she'd hurt over the years, about the abuse she dealt out, about the manipulation, about the brutality and violence. At first she railed against these thoughts. It was the only way of alternating society. It was my lusus and how I was raised. It was the only way to stop the screams in my head. And for a while, these thoughts and her own sense of self-importance comforted her. They kept her sane in a place where sanity had very little meaning. If she could maintain that sense of control, she would be okay. But control is an illusion. It is the sum of all the decisions we make or do not make, and all the decisions made and not made by others on our behalf. It is, at best, a concept that gives us a sense of meaning. At worst, it is a prison that holds our minds. So Vriska spent what felt like years, centuries, trapped inside a prison of her own mind. And over that time, she began to do something she had resisted for so long. She began to reflect on herself. And as she reflected, she wanted to take responsibility. Eventually, she came to a realization. Either she could languish in an eternal state of self-doubt and indecision, or she could decide to move forward. Moving forward meant facing the people she'd hurt, and meant facing the woman she loved, one of the ones she hurt the most, and meant facing the possibility that she would be hated. Or, even worse, ignored. I know it doesn't make sense. Vriska stopped talking and looked around again. Kanaya could see the tears welling up in her eyes. June had taken a seat next to Vriska and was smiling in a way that could only be described as deeply supportive. Terezi hadn't stopped holding Vriska's hand the entire time and had been nodding along the entire time she spoke.
Vriska's very different.
Kanaya supposed if they were giving out the obvious awards for obvious thoughts, that one would probably rank near the top. Still, it was true. The Vriska she'd known 4 years ago had been brash and arrogant. She had rushed into danger without thinking twice. The Vriska sitting before them now felt so much older, but in a way that conveyed hard-won knowledge rather than physical age. The look in her eyes that Kanai had initially read as exhaustion was something more, a kind of existential uncertainty that made a lot more sense after hearing about her experiences inside the black hole. Okay, but you left something out, Rose's voice cut Kanaya's musing down in the middle. How'd you even get back here? Vriska ignored Rose and looked directly at Kanaya. She felt a sudden and unsettling urge to turn and run in the other direction. I had to make a decision. And, if folks are up for it, I will read another chapter of this because these are shorter than I remember, and I'm still good. Vote now in chat. Vote now on your phones. Should we keep reading? I'm going to run. Yes. Yeah, I'm going to actually go real quick and just fill up my water because I'm out of it. So I'll be back in like a minute. All right, and I am back. All right, yeah. So this story was written to be very like cliffhangery, and everything kind of ties together. And I had a reader that was reading through it and like commenting on every chapter, and so they were kind of like in real time. I could see where they were in the story, and I got to one point where I knew what they were going to read next, and I was like, "Oh my God, no!" Like they're about to get to the real bad part where it's like everything looks terrible, and I was like, "Oh my God, they're gonna not like that." And I think at one point they were like, I was worried that they were going to be reading ahead of where I was posting stuff and like get onto the real bad cliffhanger. But now it doesn't matter because all this stuff is posted. So okay, cool. I'm trying to remember when it actually loops for the first time. I think it's chapter 4. I'm just going to keep reading this. These are way shorter than I remembered, so I could probably do like 2 more. This one's real short. What the hell? What was I on that I didn't write chapters that were like 4,000 words long? Anyway, back at it. This is Callie, first cycle, concurrent to the last chapter. It was important that neither they nor Roxy go with June to talk to Vriska. Calliope,
Excuse me, Callie, please.
my apologies, Callie. Callie had been very specific when they talked to their partners about the situation. They had both seemed to understand, although June in particular seemed to feel like she should say something else. Callie gave her a look, and she dropped the issue. So Roxy and Callie were sitting together in the house that the 3 of them shared and waiting to hear from June. Do you want to try to go back to bed? Roxy asked from across the table where the 2 of them were sitting. She was smiling softly, and Calliope,
Just explain this to you.
I'm sorry, it's hard.
I don't feel like it should be that hard for you in particular.
That's a very loaded statement. Besides, you don't even know who I am.
You're the one writing this. You're the reason we're having this conversation.
You're wrong.
What?
And Callie smiled back, trying their best to look reassuring and calm. The truth was, they felt anything but calm right now. As a matter of fact, their insides were currently engaged in a battle to see if they were going to cry or throw up first. It was a distinctly unpleasant sensation, and they tried very hard not to let their partner see it. So, do you want something to eat? Roxy was really trying to make them feel better. She could see they weren't quite right.
No, this is important. What do you mean by you're wrong?
Those words seem self explanatory.
Not in this context. If you're not the writer, who are you?
I'm not exactly sure.
How is that possible?
I'm not sure of that either.
Is there anything you are sure of?
That you should answer Roxy right now.
No, thank you,
Callie said with a quick wave of their hand.
I'm sure June will call us and let us know what's happening soon.
There was something that they weren't telling Roxy, not out of a desire to deceive or be sneaky, but out of the strong and unbreakable sense that this is how things needed to be. Before June left the house, Callie had told them to call immediately if Verska had said, "We've been through this before."
Yes, that's what wait. You don't know about that, do you?
I I feel a bit out of sorts. If Vriska had said anything like, "We've been through this before," they didn't tell June why this was important. They weren't, in fact, especially sure yet, but had emphasized that it was extremely important to know as soon as she said it. It was giving Callie a good deal of anxiety, just sitting there wondering if they would ever get the call. Across the table, Roxy was looking hopefully at them. She wanted to help so much. She was a good partner, and Callie loved her a lot, but this felt like something that they were going to have to be doing alone.
I need to understand. Who are you?
I don't know if I can explain. I feel like I'm losing the thread. That feels wrong. No, I didn't say that yet.
This isn't helping. I'm worried about my friends and you're not helping.
Pretty sure I said it. Maybe it was the other time. One of the ones that hasn't happened yet.
Don't worry about me.
Callie smiled at Roxy and reached across the table, their claw taking Roxy's hand, warm brown and cool green linking together. Callie kept smiling, even though they felt like screaming with every minute that passed without June calling.
I'm just feeling a bit out of sorts.
Callie didn't know why they repeated the phrase they'd just heard. Briska knows about me, I think.
Okay, so who are you? You didn't answer.
No, but maybe Vriska can.
That's not very helpful. It sounded like she was pretty confused from what Trezzy said.
This is going to be important, so please listen carefully. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. You need to try to remember these conversations. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but it will.
Wait.
Please stop. You're all used to thinking in terms of these great big threats to the universe, but there's other things out there that can tear everything down. Smaller things I don't. I feel like I'm losing the thread. Did I say that yet? Am I going to say that? Thinking in a nonlinear fashion is so exhausting. So I guess it's nice that she's back, even if she was kind of a bitch when she left. Roxy had been in the middle of a conversation, and Callie hadn't even heard most of it. They nodded along absently and tried to concentrate on the other conversation that was happening, except it wasn't anymore. The feeling was gone.
Am I imagining this?
Nothing. Just Roxy across the table from them, her brow furrowed and her lips pursed. "You all right, babe? You keep looking like you're spacing out." Roxy frowned and squeezed their hand tightly. "You worried?" Callie nodded their head quickly. It wasn't worry so much as something less defined. Existential dread sounded pretty cliche, but it also seemed to fit. They found themselves squeezing Roxy's hand a lot harder than they intended, then abruptly let go and started tapping the table. "Seriously, what's up?" Roxy leaned forward a bit, concern spreading over her face. "You've been acting super weird ever since Terezi texted you about Vriska. Like, I get this is different, but is it really any weirder than half the shit we've already been through?" Callie leaned back. "You've got a decision to make. Two options, meat or candy. No, that's not right. Lie or tell her the truth. Maybe more. Maybe tell her some of the truth.
You really aren't helping here.
I feel like I've heard that line before. Maybe not word for word, but I feel like the sentiment was there.
I can't tell you.
They said it plainly, without a trace of anger or malice.
I really wish I could, but honestly, I'm afraid of what will happen.
Callie reached out and took Roxy's hands in their own.
Can you trust me? Do you trust me?
Roxy nodded.
Okay, then please.
Tears started welling up in Callie's eyes, and they weren't even sure why. It felt like this was about to change. Something was about to change. Cycles are a part of nature. I feel like I read that once somewhere.
Can you please just stop talking for a minute? I want to enjoy this while it lasts. Just let me enjoy this while it lasts.
Roxy frowned but said nothing. Callie's phone rang, the goofy, grinning face of June Egbert lighting up the screen. If it's true that cycles are, in fact, part of nature, then this shouldn't surprise anyone. In fact, it should seem almost poetic in its relevance. Without another word, Callie picked up the phone and held it to their ear.
Callie?
June's voice sounded distant, as if she were speaking from the end of a long tunnel.
Callie, she said the thing. I mean, exactly how you said it. It was weird. She just kind of sitting there, and Terezi was holding her, and that was sweet. And she just kind of looked right at Kanaya, and she said it. She didn't explain. She just.
June,
Callie interrupted, their face falling, as they stared forward at Roxy.
I think maybe one of us did something wrong.
Isn't that a little bit melodramatic? Sounds like something I would have written.
What does it mean?
What makes you think I know? They said, with a wink. An invisible wink, after all, being a disembodied narrative device. I think that's what I was supposed to say.
Callie? What are you talking about?
Both Roxy and June were saying the same thing, or close enough that Callie couldn't tell the difference. She closed her eyes and. Next chapter. Wow, I was real bad with cliffhangers in this one. Yeah, hell yeah, one more. I'm probably just gonna keep reading until I feel like I don't feel like reading anymore. I'm gonna do a Will It Homestuck fic reading where this turns into 3 hours of me reading. Yeah, I they are so I forgot how much I did that in this, very much on purpose. Okay, so this is Kanaya Merriam, second cycle, Dead of the Night. Again, the cycle thing is super important. Minor spoiler because I didn't actually explain it super well. I just kind of assume the reader will figure it out, but it'll make more sense if you know it offhand. The cycle refers to the time loop they're on. Yeah. Thank you so much. The cycle refers to what loop they're on, so that's super important. And I won't spoil anything else because a lot of shit happens. The worst dreams were never about what she'd been through physically. Never about the pain, never about the physical torture of being killed and then reborn as something other. A being who no longer existed in the space of the living, but didn't quite belong in the space of the dead either. The worst dreams were never about fear, not how terrified she'd been that once the woman she loved discovered what she really was, she wouldn't be loved anymore, or that she would lose control in one brief moment and do harm she could never reverse. The worst dreams, the ones that haunted Kanaya through to the waking and out the other side to the still hours of the night when she was alone with her thoughts. Those dreams were about losing her very self, about being so consumed by the hunger that she could no longer come back, losing everything that made her life meaningful and leaving behind only the desire to feed. In those dreams, she was no longer merely a rainbow drinker, but a beast that had spiraled completely out of control. Kanaya could see the faces of the people she loved, and Rose's face clearest of all. They were filled with an abject terror that would never be wiped clean. Kanaya knew in that moment that she had become the monster she always feared she would. Kanaya awoke from the dream drenched in sweat. Her light silk nightshirt was clinging damply to her cool gray skin, and her heart was racing. As she woke, the dim light that emanated from her skin faded as she consciously brought it under control. Next to her on the bed, Rose Lalonde was still sleeping peacefully. Kanaya smiled down at her wife, but the feeling of the dream hadn't left her. Careful not to wake Rose, Kanaya carefully slipped out of the bed, her bare feet treading lightly on the softly carpeted floor. The room was an eclectic mixture of the two women's styles, a blend of Kanaya's precise, colorful decoration and Rose's haphazard but charming clutter of books, papers, and various odds and ends. Kanaya reached down for a book of half finished wizard fiction and placed it gingerly down on the nearby desk. Outside the window, Earthsea was bathed in the pale moonlight. Kanaya had never seen the moon of the original Earth, but she found this one to be immensely comforting. Although she loved the brilliant daylight, there was something romantic about the soft, cool quality of the moonlight that Kanaya enjoyed almost as much. She leaned over, staring out the window.
I need to feed right away.
She was struck by the unexpected brutality of the thought and nearly stumbled backwards away from the window. She glanced over at Rose, still asleep on the bed. It was as if she could hear the blood pulsing through her wife's arteries and veins.
What I really need is a distraction.
No matter how many times she told herself it wasn't helping, the feeling was growing in her, like she had something buried under her skin and no amount of scratching would help dislodge it. Kanaya made a noise that was halfway between a groan and a whimper, wrapping her arms around herself and shivering.
Why am I having these thoughts all of a sudden?
She walked over to the bed, softly navigating the small piles of clothing and papers that Rose had deposited throughout the bedroom. When she got to the edge, Kanaya set herself down in a manner that could best be described as delicately and reached over to place a hand on Rose's shoulder. As soon as her hand brushed her wife's faded pajamas, Kanaya smiled and blinked heavily. She softly rubbed Rose's shoulder through the cotton cloth.
Rose, darling, are you awake?
The human woman made a noise that sounded like mmm and rolled towards Kanaya's hand. Yeah, I'm wide awake. Rose's voice was heavy with sleep, but she sounded almost amused. You okay?
I must confess,
Kanaya said, looking down sheepishly.
that I am very much not okay right now.
Rose blinked heavily and sat up on the bed, shifting over to wrap her arms around Kanaya's waist. In the blink of an eye, Kanaya found herself being held very closely by her wife and staring directly into her deep violet eyes. Rose looked worried. You had the dream again.
Wait, this feels off.
Kanaya nodded.
The same one as before.
She knew that if she didn't say anything, she would never go back to sleep again.
I feel like feeding when I awoke.
Kanai didn't say anything else, but as soon as the words left her mouth, she found herself being held even closer by Rose. Kanaya allowed herself to sink into her wife's embrace and closed her eyes with a little sigh.
That is perhaps an understandable reaction to trauma, given your particular history. No, it's not right. That's what I said. Rose was talking about drinking. Rose,
Kanaya muttered, almost to herself.
when's the last time you thought about having a drink? How do you keep those thoughts away?
I don't. She was plain about it. I don't keep the thoughts away. I deal with them as they come. I have to deal with them, she accentuated with a squeeze and press of her head against Kanaya's neck. Kanaya felt her heart leap.
I love you, Rose. I truly feel this in my heart.
Rose said it quietly and felt Rose's breath let out. I love you too. Rose trailed off and it was silent for a moment. In that moment, Kanaya felt only the comforting warmth of her wife's arms wrapped around her. The beat of her heart was so close, and Kanaya didn't want to ever leave that moment. We've been through this before. Kanaya felt something drop in the pit of her stomach.
What did Vriska say?
That thought made no sense. Why did she even think that? Vriska had been gone for almost 4 years. Once she fell back into the black hole, basically everyone had assumed she was dead. Everyone except for Terezi, and even she seemed to be giving up hope of ever finding Vriska again. She looked right at you when she said it.
Who looked right at me?
You know the answer.
Vriska?
Got it in one. Don't want to lose the thread. Spider puns are great, aren't they?
Rose, can I ask you a delicate question?
Kanaya's voice sounded muffled. given that she was pressing her head into Rose's shoulder.
Of course. Can you tell me what they sounded like when they used to speak to you?
Kanaya said it as quietly and delicately as she could manage, but she felt Rose's entire body stiffen up as soon as she heard. Her wife knew exactly what Kanaya meant. They sang to me, but it felt like it was always in a key that my brain couldn't quite understand. It wasn't singing like I've ever heard it anywhere else, and Rose was beginning to choke on her words, and Kanai could feel her shaking a little. The more they sang, the less I felt like myself. Now she was starting to sob. Kanaya sat back from Rose and extended a hand to brush her cheeks. The traces of tears were beginning to find their way down from her eyes. Shoosh, Kanaya softly whispered as she placed both palms up against Rose's cheeks and smiled at her.
I'm so sorry, darling. I did not mean to bring up something you would rather forget about.
Rose shook her head, but managed a thin smile. She turned her head and planted a kiss on Kanaya's right palm. It's not your fault, but what made you ask about that? Kanaya shook her head.
Please, I have to admit that I cannot answer that question fully right now. I had a thought, but I do not want you to worry about it. I promise that I will talk to you about it once I have had a chance to reflect. And I promise that it is not something that will imminently hurt anyone.
Rose nodded, brushing her chin against Kanaya's hands in the process. Okay, that's fair, she smiled. As if cued by some unseen presence, two phones began to ring in the room. Kanaya's phone, stored neatly on the bedside table, was the closest. Before Rose could even find her way to her phone, Kanaya had reached up and pulled hers from the table. The display read Terezi in neat text. Kanaya unlocked the phone and brought it to her ear.
Terezi?
She waited a moment.
Kanaya? Oh, good. Listen, you and Mrs. Wizard need to get over to Cantown Center right now. Briska's back, and you need to hear what she has to say.
Kanaya felt her blood run cold, and her eyes begin to water.
I'm sorry. Did I perhaps mishear?
Oh,
Terezi cut her off.
Briska's back. Get over here. Don't fly. Don't ask questions. We'll explain everything soon.
The phone made its little chime to tell her that the call was disconnected, and Kanaya stared straight ahead, looking off into the distance. We've been through this before.
This hasn't happened yet.
You realize that makes you sound insane, right?
This has happened already.
Not better. Kanaya's head was starting to hurt. She pressed her hands against her temples and closed her eyes tight. Rose was still on the phone, and from the excited shouting over the speaker, it was definitely June that she was talking to.
Rose.
Kanaya's voice was a little more than a whisper. When Rose saw her lips moving, she stopped talking. June, please stop talking for a minute. Rose. It's just Terezi being overly concerned about Vriska's mental health. It doesn't have any plot relevance whatsoever. Terezi's just being weird. She's like really concerned that Vriska is going to just freak out if everything's not like absolutely perfect, which that is actually kind of plot relevant. June, please stop talking for a minute. Rose cut June off mid-sentence and sat down on the bed next to Kanaya. What's wrong?
Rose.
Kanaya said it again, talking a bit louder.
I can't go with you. I don't know how to explain, but you said you trusted me, right?
Rose nodded. Don't worry about explaining now. This is turning into a fucked up night. You tell me what's going on and when you figure it out, okay? I'm going to go see what's up with Vriska. This is crazy. Kanaya nodded slightly as Rose got up from the bed and began to put her shoes on, not even bothering to change out of her pajamas.
Rose.
Darling? Rose smiled down at Kanaya.
Please be careful. Something is really wrong. I don't know how to explain it, but it feels like something bad is happening.
Rose nodded along as Kanaya spoke and finally walked over to place her hand on her head. Kanaya looked up into Rose's sparkling eyes and smiled. A wave of intense longing swept over her, and she wanted more than anything to simply stay in this room together for as long as it took for things to go back to normal. It's not going to stop, you know.
I very much do not know that.
I promise, Rose said, leaning over to kiss Kanaya. As soon as their lips pressed together and Kanaya tasted the faint sweetness of her wife's lip gloss, She felt like her heart was going to break.
I promise I'll be careful.
No one can keep that promise. Not anymore.
All right, we'll do another one. This is definitely going to have to be the last one. Let me just check the length on this. Yeah, sure, what the hell. I will do this chapter, and then I will save the rest for later. Terezi Pyro, first cycle, the afternoon before the phone calls. She decided to take a walk in the fields that afternoon. The sun was pleasant and warm on her skin, and the smells of the summer day were calming. Calm was something that Terezi found increasingly hard to find in those days, and she would gladly take whatever she could get. So she walked out of Cantown and into the woods and the fields, taking in the vast bouquet of scents and tastes and sounds that drifted in from every angle. It was a pleasant enough distraction, at least for a while. The problem with distractions is that their effect only typically lasts about as long as the distraction itself. After that, the thoughts tend to come rushing back in, like building a wall of sand at the beach. The illusion of separation and control only lasts until the waves start coming back in. So every single walk was an escape that lasted just as long as the walk itself, sometimes not even then, because Trezi's thoughts always seemed to return to the same place time and time again. Vriska was out there. She knew it. She had no evidence of this whatsoever, but deep in her heart, she knew it was the truth. However long it had been, and however unlikely everyone else said it was, Terezi knew that Briss was still out there somewhere, all alone. Everything had ended on such a weird note. Everything had. Years ago, but not many, two trolls were sitting together on a meteor that was rapidly hurtling toward a conflict that would see them either dead or victorious. At this point, there were no other options. These two had a long history together. It wasn't always pleasant, and it wasn't always kind. In fact, it was frequently violent and brutal. But then again, they both told themselves that violent and brutal was pretty much par for the course where they came from. They spent a long time talking together. In the last few years, they'd spent a lot of time together in general. They were closer than they'd ever been before. I think that maybe one of the two, the one whose thing should have been spider puns, I think maybe she was starting to feel a certain way about her good friend. And maybe the friend, the one whose thing was justice and eating chalk, maybe she was starting to feel a certain way about her good friend too. You know, romance-wise. But they didn't really talk about it in great detail. They spent a lot of time together, and maybe ended up falling asleep in bed together after watching a movie, or holding hands a lot, or that time they spent a considerable amount of time kissing each other. Yeah, okay, so they were basically a couple. But still, they hadn't really talked about it. Just kind of went with things to see where they would go. And now they were about to do something that could very well get either one or both of them killed. I wouldn't have put money on it, but the spider one actually told the other that she loved her. Like, she actually said those words out loud. I love you, Rezi. And she kind of trailed off and blushed a lot, and maybe the other one pretended she didn't hear. That was a lie. Terezi has very good hearing. It's one of her things. Maybe she was taken aback, but it made her heart speed up a whole lot, and she felt a sudden urge to hide her face because she was also blushing. But no one really said anything else. They went on to talk about something else and just kind of left it like that. It was something that Vriska thought a lot about in the coming years. The afternoon's walk had been a pleasant distraction. Terezi loved the summer in this part of Earthsea. Everything was so perfect, almost perfect. At the same time, it made her soul ache a little to consider that someone she cared a lot about wasn't there to enjoy this with. Someone that she loved. Okay, someone that she loved a lot and maybe wanted to kiss too. Those those things didn't always have to go together, sure, but in Terezi's case, they definitely did.
Being stupid like a stupid wriggler.
Terezi hadn't been speaking to anyone. She had just been walking by herself. And then, without a perceptible change, she wasn't. There was someone standing in front of her that hadn't been there before. She could smell them. She could smell her. She could practically see the color of their outfit, their hair, their skin, their lips, still coated in the same blue lipstick that she'd always liked so much.
Vriska.
Terezi's heart was hammering in her chest, and she felt her eyes burning with tears. This wasn't possible. It wasn't a thing that could happen. She put her hands up instinctively, reaching out towards the maybe Vriska. No, there was no uncertainty about this. There was a brush of movement, and Terezi had felt long, soft fingers winding in between her own. Palms had delicately pressed up to her own. A familiar forehead settled on her own, brushing past some stray hairs. It was all so warm and familiar and comfortable. Terezi felt heat rising to her face that had absolutely nothing to do with the warm summer day.
It's really you. I thought.
The tears weren't going to stop. Terezi felt her stuff starting to shake and sob, and she screwed her lips in and desperately tried not to start bawling in the face of the woman who'd made a love confession to her. She was cool and collected, and nothing fazed her. She was crying like a small wriggler and clinging desperately to Vriska's hands and hoping against everything this was real. Yeah, I do. Terezi had no idea what Vriska was talking about, but it was her voice, without any shadow of the smallest doubt. For a long time, the two trolls just stood there together, holding hands, faces pressed close, in the middle of this sunny spot of grass. If Terezi could choose, she would have chosen never to leave that place. But sometimes choice isn't just about one person's decisions. It's about the combined decisions of a number of different people who don't necessarily have the same information or the same end goals in mind. Terezi, Vriska muttered, we need to go somewhere we can talk. Please, like right now. There was something so different about Vriska's voice. She sounded so much older than she had 4 years ago. The edge to her voice was still there, kind of, but it was blunted. At the same time, there was an underlying sense of urgency. Terezi didn't get the sense that this was just going to be a feelings jam.
No one really comes out here. There's a place nearby I like to go sometimes.
Terezi let go of one of Vriska's hands and pulled her along towards a path that led to a nearby stand of trees. Deep inside the trees, there was a treehouse. Jade had put it there, but Terezi had told almost no one about it. The way was clear. Terezi had been there hundreds of times over the last few years. She felt a tug on her arm. Vriska had stopped moving. Vriska took a sharp breath. She took another. She tried to speak, but all Terezi heard was her frantic breathing, squeezing her hand and turning back. Terezi cocked her head to the side and smiled.
You okay?
Rezi, I've been here.
Terezi smiled.
Yeah, Jade kind of copied my old treehouse.
There's 4 stuffed dragons inside. The one I remember the most is the red one. It looks like your old one, but there's something different about it. The way it's stitched or something. Also, it smells nicer than I remember the old one smelling. It looks like someone made a copy from memory, but missed a couple bits. The walls are purple alternating wood, but it's been alchemized so it won't rot. That's what was off about it. I just didn't think about it before. You've got a drawing on the wall of the two of us holding hands. Or at least you did at one point. You drew hearts.
Terezi could feel the warmth coming off Vriska's face.
You drew hearts around us like a dork.
She laughed, and there was a glimmer of the old Vriska that came through. Terezi wasn't smiling, wasn't laughing. Her mouth hung open, and she kept blinking.
How? How could you know that? Jade built all this after you weren't here.
Vriska's smell changed. It was sad, lonely. Something that was hard to put into words, but it was definitely there.
Rezi, I've got a lot I need to talk to you about.
Her voice had gone back to the quiet Vriska, the one that Terezi wasn't very familiar with, the one where all her defenses were turned off. It was kind of freaking her out a little bit, if she was being completely honest.
Hey, you can talk to me. We're
Terezi wasn't exactly sure what they were.
I still love you.
Oh shit, love confessions.
I never stopped loving you. It was such a long time.
4 years was a long time, but the way Vriska said it, it sounded like she didn't just mean 4 years. Of course, that didn't make sense. I don't. I'll have to ask you what that means in a minute. But that seemed to be kind of a running theme lately.
Hey.
Terezi didn't finish her sentence. They were at the treehouse now. Briska let Terezi climb up first and followed her shortly after. Terezi walked over and grabbed the red dragon with the slightly off stitching and took a seat in the corner on a pile of blankets she'd moved in there a few weeks ago. Oh, okay, I don't remember that. Briska's feet creaked on the wooden floor as she walked over and let herself fall heavily onto the pile next to Terezi. The two of them sat together, the pile of blankets naturally sending them cascading into each other. Terezi could feel Vriska shifting around. Hey, Rezi, would it be all right if I held you? It was that small voice again. Terezi had no idea what happened to her, but it hurt to hear. She nodded and reached out first, taking Vriska in her arms and snuggling close. Pressed up against Vriska, she could feel the moisture building on her cheeks and realized that Vriska was crying. I have so much to tell you, but I don't know how much time I have. I have this It's just this awful feeling that some shit is gonna happen soon. Like I fucked some things up somehow when I was in the other place. Without thinking, Terezi handed the red dragon to Vriska, who immediately cradled the dragon close. She couldn't see the woman's face, but Terezi could sense that she was focusing all her concentration on that dragon, as if it formed some kind of talisman that she could use to help tell her story. Time is an illusion caused by chemicals in our brain. It is a construct that represents a singular access in a dimensional calculus so vast and incomprehensible that those who try to understand it can be driven to madness by the mere vision of its totality. Remember that for later, it will become important. From Vriska's point of view, she spent several hundred years trapped in a world where she continually lived and relived everything she'd ever done, seen, or experienced. She saw things form and unform, and she forgot and remembered 1,000 times. It was only the limitations put in place by her own physical biology that allowed her to retain her own sense of self. It was only her god tier abilities that allowed her to retain her life. Vriska, of course, doesn't know this, but I do. And now, so do you. Let's keep this little secret between you and I, at least while the walls are still up. And believe me, those walls are coming down in short order. There are, as Vriska herself might have once said, many irons in the fire. Perhaps too many irons. And the fire is all consuming. We already know the story that Vriska told Terezi, the same story she has told and will tell a few hours from this moment, more or less. She tells Terezi more of it. She tells Terezi exactly what it was that convinced her to make her final decision. She tells Terezi she loves her at least twice more. Terezi felt her cheeks growing hot, and suddenly everything felt far too stuffy and uncomfortable. Vriska was right there. She was pressed up against her, and she was warm, and she was soft, and Terezi felt suddenly very self-conscious. This is so fucking stupid. You've kissed her like, what, 100 billion times before? But we were just in love. Those were the words she was looking for. But also, this Vriska seemed so different from the woman she'd known in the meteor. There was this kind of hesitation about her, but also a kind of reflective depth that was almost terrifying. Like she had time to sort through her feelings that Terezi had only scratched the surface of.
We have to tell some of the others about this.
Terezi said with far more confidence than she actually felt. As soon as the words left her mouth, she felt Vriska tuck her head down against her chest and snuggle closer. No, not yet. Vriska sounded sleepy. I want to stay here for a bit. Terezi held Vriska close and closed her own eyes.
Yeah, okay, we can do that. Let's tell them whenever you're feeling ready.
Vriska drifted quietly off into a dreamless sleep. Sitting there in silence, Terezi focused on the warm sensation of her. What were they? Her lover? That felt right enough. Terezi focused on the warm sensation of her lover pressed up against her, settling down into the pile of blankets.
I love you too, Vriss.
Terezi was asleep a few minutes later. If I might interject, I feel like they all deserve good things, generally speaking. It wasn't personal before, honestly, what happened. But, I'm not the one at the wheel anymore. All right. All right, and we're going to go to the end card. Yeah, Is this where we're leaving it? If you want to still read more, I will do another chapter, but I have to get up and use the bathroom, and then I'll be right back. Sure. Unbelievable. You know what? I can do another one. I'm good. I just need to take a very brief break, like 1 or 2 minutes, and I will be right back. All right, I'm back. I know I don't have to do this, but I like reading, and I like reading this fic in particular because it's really like the chapters are shorter and they switch POV every time, so I get to like yeah, it is fun. I love it. And I get to do a lot of different things with it. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I like this one. I'd forgotten that there's a ton of the alt narrator stuff in it. So I get to switch narrative voices and have him just be like really weird and confused and it yeah, it's a whole thing. You'll see a lot more of that. Thank you. I like this. It was fun to write. This one I did very intentionally. Okay, so yeah, and it doubles back and forth a few times. So that's why I put the indication for POV and everything. So, all right. Now that we're back, chapter 6, June. How many chapters does this have? I'm not going to read the whole thing because that would be absurd. Okay, it's got 20. I'm just trying to get a sense of where we are in the narrative. Yes, yes, yes. I say, and then we're like 8 hours into stream and have read the whole thing. Okay, June Egbert, second cycle, a short while after the phone calls. June was excited. Well, more so than usual. She tended to get excited about a lot of things, generally. Meals, time with friends, Carcat trying to tell human jokes, Terezi's role-playing campaigns. Basically anything that involved her friends was material for excitement. She figured that she'd experienced enough pain and heartbreak for a long time, so she was going to make up for it by living. The one dim spot was that she desperately wished that her friend Vriska could be there to share all of this with. She had a lot to thank Vriska for. Even though Vriska had been kind of a mean jerk a lot of the time, she had helped June become god tier. She had helped out a lot. And once June went back and retconned the entire timeline, she seemed to be kind of even out a little bit. Okay, maybe a lot bit. So when Terezi called and told her that Vriska was not only alive, but here on Earthsea and right near Cantown, June had immediately shrieked, which woke up Roxy and Callie, and then started asking a dozen questions. When did she get back? Was she okay? How did she feel? Could she talk right now? We've been through this before.
What? Who's that?
Weird. Anyway, June was super excited for everything she was going to talk to Vriska about. She was going to ask about everything she'd been doing while she was away. Where did she go? What was it like? And then they could catch up and maybe hang out together and watch some movies. Even if, and June hated to admit this, Con Air was a kind of terrible movie, maybe it was the kind of terrible movie that was also pretty fun to watch with your friends and make jokes about. June had wanted to fly to Cantown Center, but Terezi said no, and then Callie said absolutely not, and that was it. Callie was usually pretty fun, but when they got serious, it was best to just listen to them because they almost always knew what they were talking about. It was actually kind of scary. Callie said that June had to go by herself to the Cantown Center and talk to Vriska and Rose. Kanaya was supposed to be there too, but at the very last minute, Rose had texted to say that she was staying home. When Callie had heard that, they looked worried, but didn't say anything else. The only weird part was that Callie had told June to call them immediately if Vriska said one really specific thing. That was easy, and June was happy to help them out, however. They'd all been partners a couple years now, and it was going really well. June was pretty excited about that in general, too. The Cantown Center was easy to get to, and June made it there well before Rose, even without being able to fly there. She saw that Vriska was sitting on the steps with Terezi. June ran to hug her friend, and stopped dead in her tracks. Vriska looked so different.
Hey, Vriska.
It suddenly occurred to her that Vriska didn't actually know her as June. That had all happened after she disappeared. Vriska smiled slightly. Hey, June, nice to see you again. She seemed to pick up on what June was thinking and waved a hand. Don't worry, Rezi told me what's happening. Right on. I'm glad you figured yourself out. Trust me, I get it.
June, can you get Briss a blanket from inside the center? It's getting cold out here.
She was right. Despite the summer weather earlier, it was turning downright chilly. June hurried inside the building and made a quick work of the search for a blanket. Grabbing an extra one for Terezi, she walked outside to see Rose Lalonde had already walked up. She was kind of glaring at Terezi as if they'd exchanged words, but June had no idea what had been said.
You missed something important.
What does it mean? I don't know who you are.
Doesn't matter, but you missed something important. Little details, they add up.
Hey, Rose,
she said cheerfully. Rose nodded, but kept looking over at Vriska and Terezi. When Rose spoke again, it was quiet, but carried easily across the distance to where June was standing. I think that Vriska had better tell us what's going on now.
Vriska told the story again, but once again, she left out the part she didn't tell anyone else. The part she didn't even tell Terezi about. I know, because I was there. I think you do, too. We don't need to listen to the retelling because we both heard it before. We'll hear it again, too. These things work in cycles. Imagine if you were to tip a stone down a steep hill. At first it rolls along slowly, but before you know it, it's moving faster and faster. Eventually it's moving fast enough that you won't stop it. It won't stop until it hits something. I use this metaphor because the rock is already well on its way.
When the story was finished, June was staring at Vriska. She waited. She waited. Finally, she burst over to Vriska, bent over, and gave her an enormous hug.
Oh my God, that sounds horrible, and I'm so sorry.
June squeezed Vriska, who smiled softly and patted the young woman's back gently. It's okay, Vriska said. Then, without missing a beat, she turned toward Rose and spoke as if she weren't even thinking about what she was saying. We've been through this before. June felt her guts drop out. She stood up quickly, letting Vriska go, and took a step back. Rose looked more confused than anything else, but June felt raw terror moving through her.
How did Callie know?
Does it even matter?
I mean, yeah, kinda.
You know they approach things differently than you do. In that respect, they're a lot more like myself.
But who are you?
I'm not sure anymore.
Steadying her rapidly increasing breathing, June pulled out her phone and immediately dialed Callie's number. The phone picked up immediately, and June spoke without ever waiting to hear Callie's voice.
Callie.
June felt like she was talking from very, very far away.
Callie, she said the thing. I mean exactly how you said it. It was weird. She was just kind of sitting there, and I gave her a hug because I missed her so much, and she just kind of looked right at Rose and said it. She didn't explain. She just...
June,
Callie interrupted, their voice sounding too distant.
I think maybe one of us did something wrong.
June, it's probably nothing, Egbert.
Yeah, right. I'm going to see how long this chapter is. Oh my God. Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm going to end up reading this entire fic until everyone just like leaves because I forgot how quickly it moves. And I'm in it now. What else am I doing? Sleeping? That's funny. I will keep reading. So I'm going to do. I'm going to keep. No, I'm actually not going to go to sleep for another like 4 or 5 hours because I sleep in the middle of the day now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep reading. And if y'all are like, oh, this is horrible and we don't want to listen to this anymore, just let me know in chat and I will stop. Or I'll stop when I get tired of reading, which will probably be in like an hour or so. But yeah, no, if y'all are chill and want to keep hearing this, I will keep reading it because it's getting to the real like juicy parts now. Um, which reminds me, we're in the first chapter with the trigger warning. Um, this chapter has themes of alcohol addiction and abuse, as well as domestic violence. There is um, there is nothing super graphic in here. There's nothing like explicit or like gross and exploitative, but it does mention these themes. If anyone has major triggers for descriptions of alcohol abuse or descriptions of domestic violence in a kind of, this is what happened way, um, I would encourage you to speak up. I will either skip this chapter or you can log off. If everyone's cool with that, I will start reading. But do be aware that there are some stuff like that in this chapter. So yeah, we're going to start with this. Actually, give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Like, all right, and I'm back. All righty. Rose didn't dream anymore. Once she had. The dreams would come to her when she least expected, the worst kinds, the ones where she was no longer herself and nothing anyone would do could save her. But now she slept in a pleasantly dreamless stupor every night. The alcohol saw to that. Oh, we're in the third cycle now. It's third cycle, dead of night. I should probably like start with that. Alchemizing liquor was trivial for her, and she'd discovered some tricks to basically make an endless supply of whatever she felt like drinking. Once she'd been quite fond of fancy mixed drinks. She still enjoyed them, but had recently begun to favor hard liquor in its most undiluted variety. The end result was the same, but it got her there a lot faster. Rose woke up from her dreamless stupor in a cold sweat. One side effect of the constant supply of poison in her system was that she often didn't sleep particularly well, even if she did technically sleep, at least by one definition of the word. She was, at least, fairly sure that her god tier powers would keep her from dying from alcohol poisoning. Well, at least on a permanent basis. Even if the process could pretty well suck ass. Rose mumbled incoherently and swung her legs out from the messy bed. Beside her on the ruffled, stained sheets was a half-finished bottle of some kind of clear liquor. Vodka? Probably vodka. Rose's head was pounding, and she needed to take something for it first. You overdid it again. How about you fuck off? I don't understand what I did to you. Nothing. I just don't feel like talking right now, asshole. The floor was littered with discarded bottles and various wrappers. Pieces of paper with varying scribbles lay scattered and torn throughout the bedroom. A half-finished journal of wizard fiction lay directly in her path. Half of the pages were torn out. Rose bent over, retrieved the journal, and promptly threw it against the furthest wall. Fucker! She hiked her pajama pants up around her waist and slowly made her way toward the bathroom, looking for something for her head. Are you okay? What the fuck is that supposed to mean? I mean, you have the powers of a god of light, and you're just kind of living like a disgusting drunk? Oh yeah, like someone's here to fucking judge me, right? You look around. You see this? No one fucking lives here. Rose dropped to her knees in the middle of the floor and started sobbing uncontrollably. She fucking left me a year ago, you know. I'm sorry. I'm a bit out of sorts. I don't know
Who you mean?
Kanaya, you fuck! Kanaya, she...
The crying came out in great, snotty sniffles, and Rose doubled over, bending down to the dirty carpet.
She said she couldn't do this anymore. That she tried to help, but she couldn't watch me. She couldn't watch me keep killing myself.
I'm sorry. Do you need me to leave?
She said if I didn't get some help, she wouldn't know what else to do. I told her to go fuck herself, and then
The memory was going to come back. She needed something else to drink. That bottle of vodka, or whatever it was, on the bed would do. Rose pushed herself up and stumbled back to the bed, her headache temporarily deprioritized. She grabbed the bottle from the bed and unscrewed the cap. With quick, halting gulps, she downed most of the contents of the bottle.
I fucking hit her. I lost it, and I fucking slapped her in the face. I was so fucking drunk and angry, and she was just trying to help me. And she looked at me, and she was so hurt, and she just... I believe it would be for the best if I were to move out now.
And just like that, Rose had a big, empty house all to herself. A library full of books she never read anymore. A sewing room where nothing was gathered but cobwebs and dust. A bedroom where she spent most of her time testing the limits of just how much alcohol it would take to drop herself so far down that she never needed to come up into the land of memories and regrets ever again. The vodka was starting to take hold now, but not fast enough. Rose felt it churning in her stomach, and suddenly she needed to be in the bathroom right the fuck now. She ran, banged through the door, and barely made it to the toilet before her stomach decided to upend its mostly liquid contents into the bowl. It kept coming until Rose was just dry heaving all over the empty toilet. Eventually that stopped and the shaking began. Then that too stopped, and Rose was just sitting on the floor of the bathroom crying in her pajamas. Right then she felt more like a scared child than she ever had as an actual child.
Why am I even telling any of this to you? You're not real.
I wouldn't go so far as that. But I do feel very much out of my element here.
What are you even talking about?
I'm not sure.
Great. An unreliable narrator. How fucking original.
I'm not the narrator. That much I'm sure of. With a great deal of effort, Rose managed to push herself to her feet again and move back into the bedroom. After a few minutes of rummaging through scattered papers and assorted trash, she found her phone, buried underneath a half-finished suit made of what had once been a luxurious deep purple fabric. The screen was cracked, and she had never bothered to alchemize a new one, but it still worked well enough. What are you doing now?
Not talking to you. That's for fucking sure.
She unlocked her phone and checked the notifications. Nothing, no messages. She's not going to contact you. Not in this version of things.
Shut up. The fuck do you know?
About this? A great deal more than you, apparently.
Sure. You're a narrative device.
It wasn't the first time she'd done this. A while ago, back when everything first happened between her and Kanaya, she'd tried to text her ex-wife, a bunch. She tried to call her, tried to contact her in some kind of way to tell her how very sorry she was, to explain that she had just lost her temper, just let the drinking get the better of her.
Please do not contact me ever again. I've made my decision. I do not want to speak to you.
GA has blocked TT. And that was it. I told you.
Can you please just shut the fuck up?
Rose buried her head in her hands and began to sob. Every single day she missed Kanaya. Every single day she drank to forget how much she missed Kanaya and keep the damn dreams away. Every single day it just got worse and worse and worse. And most of the time when she wasn't drinking, she was wishing she had just died. Sometimes she envied the ones that did. She wished she had decided to take on Lord English and go out in a blaze of glory like Vriska did. Kanaya would have been sad, she imagined, but at least she would never have to see the kind of monster Rose had turned into. You know that there are other outcomes, right?
What's that supposed to mean? Are you always this vague? Not that I would expect a disembodied voice in my head, who is almost certainly not real, to make any fucking sense.
We've been through this before.
Rose choked mid-sob and looked around, as if she was suddenly going to see someone or something she hadn't before. Why did that sound so familiar? Images swarmed around in her head, bombarding her with ideas that made no sense. Waking up in the dark, alone, waking up next to Kanaya. A sense of impending dread. Kanaya telling her she couldn't come with her. Vriska was looking at her. Vriska didn't look like she did before. Something about her had changed. That's not how it happened. She said she couldn't be with me anymore. You're getting things confused. Don't worry. That part is normal. Without even thinking, Rose took her phone and threw it full force across the room. It hit the corner of the desk and exploded into several pieces. Rose screamed. She put her head in her hands and just screamed without words or meaning. I can't fucking do this anymore. No one called Rose anymore. Not really. Her friends had mostly given up on trying to actually reach out to her. But someone had just tried to call her. For the first time in almost a year, June Egbert was desperately trying to get a hold of her, having already spoken to most everyone else. I think you missed it this time. I don't fucking care. Cycles are a part of nature. I feel like I read that once, somewhere. Rose sat on the filthy floor in her lonely, empty house. She scuttled over to pick up the unfinished suit, the last thing Kanaya had been making for her. She cried. She cried until she ran out of tears. Then she just sat there and stared into space. She told herself that she would stay there until the sun finally rose, the dawning of a new day that would be exactly the same as all the rest that preceded it and all the rest that would come after. Okay, we're doing this one. Yeah. Comments. Yeah, this is the next, like, this chapter and like the next couple are just like woo-wee. It took a real hard turn. All right. Next chapter, chapter 8, Kanaya Miriam, third cycle, sometime during the day before the phone calls. This is not, there are no trigger warnings specifically for this one. Things will get better. Yes, things do get better. If it helps anyone who feels like shit reading this kind of stuff, everything turns out okay in the end. They will get worse, but they will get better as well. So, yeah. And there is like a point to it. There is actually, it's not just trauma porn. It's actually like there is a point to the whole everything that's happening and what it means. So yeah. Let me just see something here. I'm trying to think of how I paste this. This, which is the real bad one. You know what? I might try to read the next 3 chapters because they are all like super heavy and they get super bad, and that's when stuff starts to get better. So I might try to get through to where we start to see Vriska's point of view again. Or I'm going to end on a real fucker of a cliffhanger. One or the other. Good times. All right, we have Kanaya Miriam, third cycle sometime during the day before the phone calls. Dave Strider and Karkat Vantis were nothing if not excellent and considerate hosts. Something about their combined energy seemed to balance out in a way that was unexpected, but also highly effective. Over the last 4 years, Dave had seemed to lighten Karkat up a little bit. He was even trying out human comedy now, if somewhat badly. Karkat, in turn, had brought a touch of seriousness to Dave's overall demeanor. The result was a pair of men who could probably best be described as paternal, per Kanaya's understanding of the word. They had been lovely and considerate over the last year, when when everything had happened between her and Rose, she made the decision to move out. She no longer felt comfortable or safe with the woman that had been her partner for so long. It was a hard decision, but it was something that needed to be done. So Kanaya had asked Dave and Karkat if they would mind terribly if she were to move in with them for a while, just until she got herself sorted out. It had turned out to be an excellent decision. Kanaya lent a certain stylistic charm to the place and helped moderate minor disputes between the two. It turned out they adored having her, and despite her proposing that she move out after a couple months, insisted that she continue to live with them. They'd added another wing to the house for her to stay in and expanded it a few things to make the situation more comfortable for all of them. The house itself was a few hundred miles north of Earthsea's equator, in a place that was warm but not oppressively so. Kanaya supposed that Dave had picked the location. It resembled the descriptions he'd given of Earth's Texas hill country, with its rolling terrain and wide variety of interesting flora. Kanaya was especially fond of the small blue flowers that grew during the spring season. They were detached from the budding societies of Earthsea. The Carapacian Empire was a couple hundred miles to the north. The sea trolls lived basically on the other side of the planet, and New Alternia was 3,000 miles in an ocean away. Dave had insisted that Jade alchemize him a ridiculous flying car. He said it was based on something called a DeLorean, or something like that. That got them to the mainland. You shut your mouth. Dave is from Texas too. it's it's a detail. It's a setting detail. In truth, Kanaya welcomed the isolation. What had happened with Rose wasn't supposed to happen.
Excuse me, but who are you?
A passenger, apparently.
I do not know what that even is supposed to mean.
We spoke briefly the last time around. What had happened with Rose was something she still thought about all too often. It wasn't the physical pain. The slap hadn't even hurt very much. It was the fact that the woman she loved had been so far gone that she would even think to do that. The Rose she knew before, the Rose she'd fallen in love with, would never have laid a finger on her. So she loved became she'd loved. She had loved, a grammatical twist that forever relegated something to the domain of the past. Time is an illusion caused by chemicals in our brains.
I don't really need to hear this right now.
It's a conversation we've had before, or that we'll have in a couple hours, or maybe we've never had.
That narrows things down a lot. I'm using sarcasm there, in case that was not clear.
Oh, Kanaya, you are by far my favorite.
And right now she was sitting alone at a long marble counter in a large kitchen. Karkat and Dave had gone out for a walk, and she was alone with her thoughts. It was an unpleasant and sometimes dangerous place to be.
And apparently getting a lot stranger as of late.
I'm trying to think what kind of puns you could use. As your thing.
Excuse me?
Well, the sea trolls all have fish puns, and I tried to tell Vriska she should do spider puns. She wasn't a fan. But what about you? Fashion puns? Vampire puns?
I don't really like to talk about the last bit.
I know. It'll be relevant, too. Give it, I don't know. I'd say maybe one more turnaround at the rate things are going.
Kanaya groaned and leaned down, placing her head on the cool stone counter and closing her eyes. What bothered her the most was how out of nowhere this all seemed to be. She knew Rose had been struggling with her nightmares, and the alcohol was such an easy sounding solution. But she had really thought that she and Rose were communicating. Kanaya thought that she'd created a safe place for her wife to express herself, somewhere that she felt comfortable enough to open up and talk about those dark parts of herself that she was still struggling with.
Stupid,
Kanaya muttered to herself.
I could have helped you before it got that bad.
You realize you don't control the actions of others, right? At best, you influence them, but sometimes they just act on their own.
So what? I loved her. I think I still love her.
That's probably tremendously unhealthy. I have some experience with this kind of thing.
I know it's not healthy. The whole last year hasn't felt particularly healthy.
Wait, what did you just say? How long? No, that isn't right.
Believe me, I have been quite astute in my perception of time as of late.
That can't be right. That's too long. Too far off the main line.
I'm not convinced you are even real, let alone that you know what you're speaking about.
Nothing.
Because, of course, that was just her brain batting nonsense around to try to distract her from her feelings. That wasn't working particularly well, but at least it was trying. She had to give it credit for that, at least. Kanaya laughed, but there was no humor or joy in it.
Her phone buzzed in her skirt's pocket. Of course she has pockets in her skirt. Kanaya Merriam is a practical lady as well as a stylish one. This isn't right. This isn't supposed to happen yet.
Oh, shut up.
Don't answer it. If you're feeling even a little bit okay with your life as it is, don't fucking answer it.
Shut up. Who even said I was okay with my life as it is?
Kanaya retrieved the phone from her pocket and placed it to her ear without even checking to see who was calling. It was Terezi's voice on the other end of the line. She sounded worried.
Kanaya, are you still at Dave Katz? Do they still have that stupid flying car? Do you know how to drive it?
Yes, they still have the car. I am familiar with its operation, despite my distaste for its aesthetics and general cramped nature inside.
Good. I'm sending you a location. Go there now, don't ask questions, and don't tell anyone.
That all sounded highly suspicious. Kanaya felt like she needed additional information before. Go now.
Why should I even listen to you?
Vriska. It's Vriska. She's probably starting to figure out what's happening.
This is important.
Terezi had kept speaking.
You can't tell anyone else why you're going. Make them shut up if you have to, but don't let them know.
Terezi paused, but Kanaya could hear the soft hum of the background noise over the phone. She was still on the line.
Vriska's back, and she said she needs to talk to you?
The line went dead. 15 seconds later, a text notification appeared in the corner of the screen with a single map location attached. Kanaya sat at the counter, her mouth slightly open, staring at the phone. If she's figured it out, maybe there's still a chance.
A chance for what?
To stop this from getting worse. Because I've seen what's going to happen. It can get a lot worse. I've lived in a bunch of states too. I've lived in disparate enough areas that I can do that with several places. Although I actually lived in New York for a long time, New York City, and when I was writing about New York City, I kept referencing the map because I did no like sense of where everything was anymore because I just kind of it was like it just was. Also, I was writing about the 1930s and it was different. All right. I'm going to refill my water, and then we're going to read another couple chapters. Alrighty. I'm going to keep reading. Because apparently there's 4 people that just want to listen to me talk for like 3 hours. And that's really cool. So I'm going to do it. Because I don't mind. All right, we're in another trigger warning chapter. Basically the same thing. So this is kind of continuing on the theme of Rose's alcoholism and domestic violence. So again, if you don't want to hear more about that, now might be a good time to stop listening or whatever, because it's gonna be a big thing for the next like 2 chapters. Yeah, that's cool. No, I actually really like reading. And I have my good microphone now, so it's like it sounds all nice and shit. All right, so yeah, same deal. Trigger warning. Excuse me. This is chapter 9, Vriska Circuit. Third, third cycle that same afternoon. That doesn't sound like a true statement. Okay, here we go. We've been through this before.
Oh, God fucking damn it. You have got to be fucking kidding me.
What? Oh, no, that's all right. You're back in time. I went away from the keyboard for a minute.
I did it. I did the thing. I made my decision. I'll fucking talk to everyone. I don't care if they forgive me or not anymore. I just want to move on with my life. Something you apparently have no fucking intention of doing, I guess.
It doesn't matter now. You're losing the thread. I still think spider puns would lighten the mood a little. It's getting so bad now. I think it's going to get worse.
You sound different than before. What the shit happened?
I don't feel right. Very out of sorts.
Oh shit. You're not in control here. Like at all. You can't do what you could do in the other place.
You're going to start forgetting things very soon. Hold on to what you can. Cycles are a part of nature. We've been through this before. The last one. I think that's the one you should keep in your heart. If you care about any of them, at least. The fog in Vriska's mind was starting to lift. Looking into Terezi's face and seeing her weeping with tears of joy and relief, seeing how utterly shocked she was that Vriska was even here in the first place. She loves you. She said it once.
You...
Vriska started to talk, as if to herself. You love me? Terezi made a sound that could only be described as a squeak.
What I...
Terezi was flushed, her gray skin tinged deep teal. Vriska held her hands and stepped in a little closer. After everything, after all the hundreds of sweeps, she didn't want to hurt her anymore.
Sorry. You don't have to say anything. It was just a stupid thought.
Terezi kind of wiggled her nose.
Yeah, okay, so what if it were maybe true?
She looked down unconsciously.
Would that bother you?
Vriska leaned in and kissed Terezi on the cheek. No. This is really touching. This is touching, really. I genuinely mean it. But you need to talk to some folks. The longer you wait, the worse this will get.
Who? What the fuck? I thought we were done with this.
Vriska took a deep breath. Panic was starting to rise up inside her. Something about this felt horribly urgent all of a sudden.
Listen, Rezi, I'm serious about this. I have so much time to think about this, and I love you. You're fucking amazing. I want to spend a lot of time with you, and this is going to sound crazy, but I think we might have already done that.
She shook her head frantically.
Never mind. It's hard to explain. But right now, I need to talk to some people. I mean, right the fuck now. Can you help?
Terezi was nodding.
Okay.
She stopped and concentrated. The names came right away.
Rose and Kanaya. First them, also John, and Calliope.
Terezi sniffed.
Some stuff changed while you were away. So Callie is what they like to be called. Also, so John isn't John anymore. She's June. She came out like 3 years ago or something.
Vriska blinked, paused, and laughed.
No shit, good for her. Okay, I need to talk to Rose, Kanaya, Callie, and June.
She saw Terezi's face, and something about her look was off.
What? What's wrong?
Rose, she's not okay anymore. The drinking got really bad, and then she hit Kanaya, and Kanaya moved out. Now Rose lives by herself, and no one talks to her. I doubt she'd even agree to come if you wanted to talk to her.
Fuck! This is important, damn it.
Terezi winced.
I'm sorry. I'm not mad at you. I'm forgetting stuff I need to remember every second we wait. I already feel like if I wait much longer, I'll just forget everything, and then it'll just be business as usual. Except it's not. Something's really seriously wrong, like on a fundamental level.
A universal constant got altered.
What the fuck does that mean?
Some basic element of the universal equation got changed. I would imagine it has something to do with your escape from your former prison. Probably not entirely, but at least in part.
I'm not fucking going back. You know that, right?
I wasn't going to suggest that. Just tell the others. Maybe you can figure something out.
Okay.
Terezi was already letting go of Vriska's hands and digging for her phone.
I'll call June, and maybe she can get rid of Rose. Kanaya's staying with Dave and Carcat, so I'll call her next. Callie lives with June. That'll be easy.
Terezi ushered Vriska through the field with haste, showing the way to the treehouse.
Vriska was struck, at least for the third time, by how this was the same version of the treehouse she'd seen while she was trapped. June was called and promised to do everything she could to get a hold of Rose. Callie said that she would come over with June within the hour. Terezi finally called Kanaya and was assured that she would be over within the hour.
So,
Terezi had waited a few minutes to speak again.
about earlier?
Vriska blushed deep blue. Oh shit, I actually fucking said that out loud, didn't I? She fidgeted with her shirt. It's true. I guess I should have probably said something before, you went away for so long. Oh no, it's Terezi talking.
It's true. I guess I should have probably said something before, you went away for so long. What even happened while you were gone?
Should I tell her? How much do I tell her? Fuck you, help me out here. I don't know. We're getting so far away from what I know. Another one or two more of these, I don't even think I'll be able to help. Fuck it, Vriska said out loud. Terezi, I got some crazy shit to tell you, and you're not going to fucking believe me, but I need to say it. And the weirdest part is, I feel like I've already told you this before. Terezi looked down and was very quiet. Vriska saw that she was holding the red dragon plush, the exact same one that Vriska had been holding in that terrible place. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper.
Briss, you were gone for so long. Things have gotten so bad here. Everything's falling apart. And it feels so wrong the way things are.
She looked up towards Vriska and her nose twitched.
Do you know that I saw us together before the final battle?
Ooh, who's talking? Oh, yeah.
I could remember everything that happened in the alternate timelines. I saw us dead together, and we were holding each other right before the dream bubbles collapsed. I've seen all these different converging realities, and somehow I feel like it's happening again.
Without asking again, Vriska began. The black hole was like another fucking world, but it didn't follow the same rules as our world does. I guess everyone thought I was in there for a couple of sweeps. I should use years since that's what we're doing now. To you, it seemed like 4 years. To me, it was like fucking 800 or so. But I didn't live it normally. I just kept jumping back and forth and repeating things and reliving old memories and stuff. I kept ending up alone with all my thoughts. I kept thinking about the ways I hurt everyone. But with all that shit, I started hearing a voice. Not something in my head, but from all around me. I don't remember everything, but it was like someone was writing my story or trying to write it. Things kept changing and shifting around. They did weird shit too. I think at one point they basically tried to narrate Mindfang fanfic, and I could see it happening. Then I just got fed up and told them to fuck off. But I realized that I could kind of control things too. They kept saying the same shit about making decisions, and I kept feeling like there was shit I needed to take care of back here. So I wanted to be here with you, and I wanted to stay with you and make everything better. The craziest fucking thing is I'm pretty sure I did this a bunch of times. Rezi, I think I'm doing something bad. I think I'm messing stuff up and making it worse. Vriska was shaking. By the time she finished, tears streaked her cheeks, and her eyes were downcast. Terezi, who had been listening intently, simply slid over and wrapped herself around Vriska. Neither one of them said anything more for a while. Time is an illusion caused by chemicals in our brains. Fuck you, I know that. You already said that, I think. Maybe not to me, but I know you said it. Just shut the fuck up and let me enjoy this while it lasts. It was a half hour later that the first of their guests showed up. June, being able to fly with Callie, came directly in the treehouse. Moments later, Kanaya was climbing the ladder from below. The mood was subdued. There were no hugs or enthusiastic greetings this time around. This is where the walls really start to break. June was shaking her head. I couldn't get through to Rose. Her phone is shut off, I guess. Fuck it, Vriska said. We're doing this now. Cards on the fucking table. Who's hearing a weird voice rambling about weird bullshit and saying the same things over and over again? Don't ask me any fucking questions. Just raise your fucking hands. Callie, Kanaya, and then June reluctantly raised her hand as well. Fucking fantastic. Great. Vriska winced and frowned. Talking about how we've done this before or something like that? Callie and Kanaya. June put her hand down. If I may, Kanaya looked at the others and waited for them to nod. I have been hearing this voice since earlier this afternoon. Shortly before June, I received a call from Terezi.
It has continued to occasionally speak its piece, completely unprompted. It knows things,
Kanaya was glaring.
but also it doesn't know a lot of things, and it is often saying things that are nonsensical or ridiculous.
June was staring at the floor.
All it said to me was that I needed to make sure Callie came with me when we went here. They're important somehow, but it wouldn't say exactly why.
These were things that surprised Vriska a lot less than she was expecting.
My theory on all this, she began without hesitation, is that the voice is the same thing I was talking to while I was stuck in the black hole. I think it's something that has an easier time understanding nonlinear reality than we do. But I also don't think it can really do much outside of the black hole.
Callie was looking intently at Vriska.
I believe you are essentially correct, Friska. Based on some of the things it has said to me, it is also able to respond clearly and knows things that I had no way of knowing. Hence my belief that it isn't a figment of our imaginations or a delusion of some kind.
Yeah, no shit.
Vriska shot back quickly. She looked at each of the women in turn before continuing.
Look, I don't know how the hell to get things back on track. I'm not even sure why I think or know that they're not. I just figure we're doing something wrong. So we're going to have to put our heads together on this. Dave still do his time bullshit?
No,
Kanaya was shaking her head.
I think even if he wanted to, he couldn't. I'm not even sure why I think.
Where are we?
Something about his abilities seemed to be intimately tied to the rules of the game and the presence of Skaya. Here in this new world, he doesn't seem to have the same control.
Well, fuck. That's not helpful.
Vriska looked down. It would still be good to let him and Karkat know what was happening. She pulled out her phone.
Hey, fuckers, listen up. Yo, what's all this about? What in the balls munching fuck, Vriska? I left a note, but I didn't want to believe it. Yeah, I'm back and basically the greatest ever. So shut up and listen, dickholes. I mean, shit, she makes some good points. Oh, shut the fuck up. What is it? I'm coming over. Gotta figure some shit out. Don't put on the motherfucking tea kettle. We will not do that. They can have instant coffee. Like all the other ungrateful fuckers we don't like much. Carcat, I'm hurt. That was me crying, by the way. Glad to see 4 years in a fucking black hole didn't make you any less of an asshole. Yo, seriously, get over here. We're all good. Yeah, fine, all right. Fuck you all. We'll put on the tea kettle.
Vriska set the phone back in her pocket and smiled. She was putting on a brave face, but inside her stomach was rolling. She couldn't shake the incredible wrongness that she felt about everything.
We're all going to Dave and Carcat's place. We're going to talk this over and try to outline the timeline and figure out what's wrong. I'm forgetting stuff pretty much constantly, and the less I remember about the other place, the harder this is going to get. So, I don't know how we're going to do that, but just fucking trust me. We're going to figure this shit out.
You don't believe that.
Oh, for fuck's sake, not again.
I don't think this is going to work.
I really need you to fucking stop talking now, okay?
The others looked resolute. They were nodding along with what Vriska said. She had a plan now. They had a course of action, a direction. This was what she was good at. Irons in the fire, plans in the works. She'd been able to engineer their defeat of the Condess and Lord English. She'd been able to plan her way out of that fucking black hole alternate reality. Maybe she was tempered now, evened out by what felt like centuries of self-growth, but she was still basically the greatest. Hell fucking yes, we are going to figure this shit out.
Hours in the future, but not many. After discussing their plans for quite some time, June tries desperately to call Rose again. For some reason, they all believe she is an integral part to setting things back the way they should be. But I think the main problem is they have a narrow and limited view of causality and time. Nothing is ever as it should be, because that is not a phrase that has any meaning. Things simply are as they are. Maybe in other realities, other timelines, they would be different. Maybe better, maybe worse. But in the end, reality is simply what happens to be in any given version of reality. That probably sounds trite. I suppose it is. It's also true. It doesn't matter what they discussed. But why, you plead? You want to know what clever plan Vriska devised. You want to know what theories they came up with. You want to know how each piece fits into each other piece and how this will all be resolved. I'm sorry, we're not there yet. I will tell you this. Vriska was wrong that night. She had good theories, yes, but they were also wrong theories. She'd already forgotten so much about her time in that other place. Maybe if she remembered more, she would have figured it out. Or maybe not. Maybe what she needed was to rethink the entire decision making framework, to reevaluate her own priorities. Sometimes our actions can have unexpected consequences, even when our intentions are genuinely good. I feel like Vriska knows this, perhaps better than most.
June was shaking her head and looking worried. She was pacing back and forth, and Vriska wanted to tell her to cut that shit out, except that Vriska was feeling just as worried. They had a plan, but getting in touch with Rose was a big part of it.
I don't understand, June was saying. She won't answer. She won't call back. We're going to need to go over there and get her.
Vriska stared ahead. This felt so wrong.
June and I will go. We're both gods here. We can both fly. It'll be faster than taking the dumb car.
Have you stopped to consider something?
Not a good fucking time.
The consequences of breaking the narrative this much?
Really not a good fucking time.
The flight to Rose's house went by in grim silence, and June and Vriska arrived around 2 or 3 in the morning to a series of dark windows. They sat down near the front door, and Vriska walked up and knocked heavily, then rang the doorbell and knocked again.
She's probably sleeping off the drinking,
June said, her voice tinged with sadness.
She does that all the time now. I think I'm the only one who even cares anymore. Even Kanaya. I think Kanaya does, but Rose hurt her a lot.
It did hurt Vriska to hear that, especially that Kanaya was in so much pain. Okay, so maybe there were some unresolved issues between her and Kanaya that they needed to feelings jam out sometime. It wasn't a good time. Vriska knocked again, harder.
Oh, fuck you, Rose! Open the fucking door!
Vriska's voice rang out into the still night air, but no sound came from inside the house. June reached out and tried the door handle. It was unlocked. Vriska put a hand to her face and groaned.
Of fucking course. She just forgot to lock it. Okay, fine. I guess we're doing this. I'm telling you, she's sleeping it off.
That's an astute observation.
Really? You think this is a good time now?
Astute, but incorrect.
Fuck off.
The interior of the house was filthy. Bits and pieces of broken furniture were scattered around. What had once been decorative works of art were knocked off the walls or damaged in place. A few empty containers of food and considerably more of alcohol were littering the floor and shoved up against the walls. Vriska had remembered Rose being a bit on the messy side, but this was clearly the work of someone who was dealing with some shit. A few books lay on the ground, some of them open to pages covered in scribbled pen. None of it meant anything to Vriska, and she doubted very much if it meant anything to Rose either. June led the way through the house, insisting that they try to find the bedroom first. It was the only place, she explained, that Rose really spent any time in anymore. It was also going to be filthy, and Vriska should mentally prepare herself for that. Vriska had no issues with the filth. She just wanted Rose to pull her head out of her fucking ass and help them out. The least she could do was answer her fucking phone. The door to Rose's bedroom was on the second floor. The door had once been carved with her and Kanaya's names. Kanaya's had been scorched off at some point, and Vriska didn't doubt that it was Rose's handiwork. The bedroom was ajar, so June pushed it open, and they stepped in. Something crunched under Vriska's feet, and she looked down to see a broken phone. June was screaming. Why was June screaming? Vriska looked up, and in the moonlight, she got her answer. Rose was slumped against the wall on the far side of the room. She wasn't moving. June was next to her, and June was fucking screaming.
Rose! No, 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 no!
June was shaking Rose. Vriska ran up, and she could see that Rose's eyes were open and unblinking, her hand still clutching what looked like a large chunk of purple fabric. Vriska knew that if she put a hand to Rose's neck, she would feel nothing but the cold, clammy skin of a corpse.
No, how is this happening? She is fucking immortal.
This wasn't just, it wasn't heroic, it was... June was crying and screaming, and the sound was unlike anything Vriska had ever heard. She was cradling Rose's body against her chest, and that noise wasn't stopping.
How is she dead?
I'm sorry.
What the fuck?
Everything is breaking down. Vriska felt something churn in her stomach. June was weeping into Rose's hair and violently shaking. Rose's lifeless eyes were staring at her, accusing her, looking right into her very soul.
We've been through this before.
Her voice sounded so hollow and distant in her ears now. Everything was kind of getting dim around the edges. Vriska turned, threw up on the floor, then fainted. And we are definitely not stopping on that chapter or the next one. Or like the next one after that, I think. Because if I remember correctly, oh yeah, no, we're not stopping on this or the next one. Yeah, this is the part where I saw the person had read the chapter before, and I'm like, oh shit, they're hitting that one next. Yeah. All right. Chapter 10, Callie, 4th cycle, Dead of the Night. So we are now one cycle beyond what we were at. Waking up in the middle of the night had become par for the course of Callie. They had never been much of a dreamer, but all of that had changed since Rose drank herself to death. Her body had apparently sat undiscovered for days until June Egbert had decided to check in on her one day. No one could even figure out how that had been able to happen. As far as any of them knew, the God-tier folks all still had their conditional immortality, except it looked like it was a lot more conditional than it had been previously. Rose wasn't coming back. That's fine. Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm probably going to keep reading, but if you want to tap out, go for it. This will be up on stream, so if you miss anything, you can watch it later. Or if everyone's getting ready to tap out, then I'll stop. But that's really up to y'all, I figure. All right. I'll probably at least read this chapter. This is not a super long one. And then probably, actually, I'll read this one and then save the rest for later because this is kind of like an uptick, and then the next one is like super hardcore, and then the ones after it resolve it. So yeah, this is probably as good a place to leave as any. So I'll finish this chapter and then stop. Okay. June hadn't taken the discovery well. She had insisted that she needed time to process this and moved out of the house that she was sharing with Roxy and Callie. It made Callie indescribably sad, but they also knew how close June and Rose had once been. They had said they understood, and June had packed up to move in with Dave and Carcat for a while. Callie would have said that Kanaya hadn't taken the news well either, but no one was entirely sure where she was. Thank you very much. She moved out and then pretty much talked to no one. After Rose had hit her, she was already so out of sorts.
Have we talked before?
This time around? No, I don't think so. But yes, many times previously. Kanaya wasn't doing well, was the point. All this weighed heavily on Callie, so they tended to wake up at weird times with strange thoughts. Roxy was still sleeping in the bed next to them, and they had no desire to wake her. Callie brushed a stray curl back into Roxy's bonnet and carefully navigated out of the bed so as not to wake her up. Their computer was glowing in the corner of the room, and even from a distance they could see that the message window was blinking. Callie sat down in front of the computer and clicked over the message that was waiting.
Yo, Cals, can you help me with something? Oh, I am sorry for taking so long to respond. I was sleeping. Are you there?
Yeah, KK's snoring like a motherfucking chainsaw up in here. Can't sleep anyway.
What was it that you needed?
You heard from Kanaya lately? Callie frowned at the monitor.
Not in quite some time. She's been rather reclusive.
No shirt. Shit. KK got some weird voicemail from her last night. Figured it was just her and her feelings, but shit's bothering me.
How many iterations have we been through? I think it's 4 or 5 now.
Are you concerned for her safety?
Yeah, I kind of am. Like, think she might hurt herself or some shit.
I will let you know if she contacts me at all.
Dope.
Callie stepped away from the computer and walked over to the bedroom window. The moon outside was casting its pallid glow over the world, causing the shadows to take on a strange life of their own. You would consider it unnatural.
What would I consider unnatural?
The way things are right now. I don't like it. But words like natural don't mean much.
I really can't recall speaking to you before.
I wouldn't expect you to. Ironic, considering you were the first one I was able to reach. If I were better at this, I probably could have stopped all this.
All of what?
Just everything I didn't want to happen to everyone. Callie walked back to the computer and sat in the chair, swiveling to face the window. None of this was making a whole lot of sense, and they were becoming increasingly frustrated.
You won't bother telling me who you are?
That's a hard question to answer.
Trust me, I've got time.
A narrator? A writer?
Neat. I'm a writer too.
I know. That's why I was able to contact you first. I think. Now things are so thin, I think I can pretty much talk to anyone.
So why me?
Story structure, narrative convention. You're the character we're focused on.
Does it occur to you that I'm a person and not a character?
That's funny. You're the second person to tell me that. The computer screen blinked again. A new message.
Oh shit! KK got a call from Kanaya. She left another voicemail. Same shit though. Just kind of crying and making noise. I'll keep you posted, Cals.
Thank you. I very much appreciate it.
Callie turned back to the window and groaned.
So you're inside everyone's heads. Tell me what's happening right now. Why does everyone feel so weird in the last year?
I can't.
Can't or won't?
Literally can't. I'm so far outside my depth. I'm even holding on to this much. It takes a lot out of me. Sometimes things just kind of break down. And sometimes we can never return to how things are or how we want them to be. Those are true statements, even if that sometimes hurts to hear. But people often have a sense of what's supposed to be, a sense of right or wrong in universal terms. Terms that might be meaningless in a broad sense, but that mean everything to a given individual. The computer screen blinked again. She had a new message from Terezi? There appeared to be several unread messages that she hadn't seen previously. Callie started on the oldest one.
Hey, I need you to watch something for me. I know it sounds weird, but can you let me know if you hear from Kanaya? I got a weird voicemail from her earlier. I'm worried about her.
There was a very long break in the timestamps on the messages. Several hours. And then they resumed.
I am truly sorry about that. I have heard from Kanaya again, and she is fine. In fact, everything is fine, and it was all just a misunderstanding.
Callie felt cold all over. She glanced over at Roxy, still sleeping peacefully on the bed. Suddenly, they were very worried. All right. And I am going to stop for tonight because the next two chapters kind of need to be read together or it is kind of a spectacular experience emotionally. But so yeah, thanks to everyone that's still in chat. I think Clever ducked out. Possibly, I don't know. Yeah. Thanks to everyone for coming to listen. Everyone that's in chat, everyone that's lurking out there and not in chat. Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing this. Next time I will read more of this. I will probably not finish it. Some of the later chapters are super short. Like the last 4 chapters are all basically just like dust up epilogue, like 300 word chapters. So realistically, I've got like 16. Actually, yeah, I'm more than halfway through. So yeah, we might finish this next time. So yeah, tune in next week. I will do this at the same time on Sunday. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for listening and commenting. And I'm glad you all enjoyed yourselves. I had a ton of fun reading and I'm looking forward to doing it again. So I will see y'all later.
Bye.
You're welcome. I had a lot of fun reading.
Bye.